The Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday the 9th of December 2020. Welcome councillors, staff and media. So it's my pleasure to now open the meeting and we do have one apology from Councillor Jones, who has had a prior commitment to another important function in the community. So Councillor Jones will be off doing other business this morning. I'd now have to hand on to, can we note that, Bill? Oh, do we have a mover and second for that? This is my first time I've had someone absent. Thanks, Councillor Potter. And a second, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Thanks, Mr CEO. Okay, let's move on to item 3, recognition of the traditional owners. And if I could invite Councillor Duff to do that. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka people, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, you'll have the agenda in front of you. Are there any items that you feel would give rise to a conflict of interest, either prescribed or declarable? Councillor Potter?
No, thank you.
You've got your light on.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so we have no conflict of interests notified to the meeting. We'll now move on to item 5.1, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. They can be found at 5. And the minutes are there provided. Councillors have all had an opportunity to read through those. Councillors, do you have, I'll move that those minutes be received. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Duff. Councillors, any questions, concerns in relation to those minutes? Those in favour of receipt? Passed unanimously. Thank you all. Let's move on to item 6.1 at 14, and that is the portfolio report for social and corporate performance, people and culture, communications and media, finance and ICT. And it's my pleasure to now present that to the meeting. Right, well, first of all, social and corporate performance and records management team, pleased to say, visited the Queensland State Archives recently. That happened on the Wednesday, the 2nd of December 2020. And councils, the team visited the Queensland State Archive facility in Brisbane. QSA is a government facility that provides access to Queensland's most significant historical records. QSA also sets standards to make sure local government creates and manages its records appropriately in line with the Public Records Act of 2002. The records management team would like to acknowledge the hospitality and transfer of knowledge by the QSA staff as they provided a guided and informative tour of all aspects of the facility, such as receival, repository and preservation. And if I could just add that, of course, that was an important opportunity for the staff, but also, to some extent, a little bit of a reward for them as well, because as we've mentioned before, they've worked extremely hard to archive up over 500 boxes under very difficult circumstances, in the heat, inside archive rooms that aren't air conditioned. So I think they well and truly earned their professional development opportunity to go to the Queensland State Archives. Could I also just acknowledge there in relation to social and corporate performance, the work that has been done by the team there, and Manager Karen, thank you very much. We're almost to Christmas and it has been an election year. It's been a year where we've had to put through a number of processes and progress a series of policies and guidelines in response to matters raised through council, in addition to matters that are required by legislation and regulation. And most recently, I was pleased to see that we now got a new register of resolutions, which are built into our ordinary meetings monthly. So there's been a body of work, that's just one example, but a large body of work done by this team. And I'd certainly like to sincerely pass on thanks on behalf of council for what has been a job well done this calendar year. Thank you. People and culture, of course, as well. Upcoming traineeships with Sapinet Regional Council. The council will once again partner with Local Government Association of Queensland, LGAQ, and the Queensland State Government to fund, recruit and select the right people to train in council for 11 12-month traineeships. This training is proudly funded by the Queensland Government through its First Start program under the Skilling Queenslanders for Work initiative. First Start provides wage subsidies to local councils and community-based organisations to employ additional trainees. The program offers opportunities to young people and disadvantaged job seekers to gain nationally recognised qualifications, and 12 months employment by undertaking traineeships. The traineeships will be advertised on Council's website on the 12th of January 2021. Applicants will be able to apply through seek.com.au by selecting the link provided on the employment page. The traineeships will be for the following areas: Cert 3 in Workplace Health and Safety, within the People and Culture and Safety section, based in Kingaroy. A Cert 3 in Business Administration, working within Social and Corporate Performance in Kingaroy. Now, I think I've lost my page. Here we go. Yes, again, a Cert 3 in Business Administration in Natural Resources Management and Parks in Murgon. Certificate 3 in Business Administration in Environment and Waste in Kingaroy. Certificate 3 in Business Administration in Infrastructure Support in Nanango. Certificate 3 in Business Administration in Information, Communications and Technology in Kingaroy. A Cert 2 in Horticulture in NRM and Parks in Kingaroy. Cert 2 in Horticulture, NRM and Parks, Nanango. A Cert 2 in Horticulture, NRM and Parks in Murgon. And a Cert 4 in Library Services, working within the library in Kingaroy. A Cert 2 in Civil Construction in Infrastructure in the Works Department, location to be advised. The eligibility to apply for these traineeships is as per the First Start funding requirements listed below, and participants must be Queensland residents, aged 15 years or older and no longer attending school, able to meet citizen, residency and visa requirements to undertake a traineeship. The key target groups are young people aged 15 to 24 years, including those in and transitioned from out-of-home care, long-term unemployed job seekers, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, mature age job seekers 45 years or older, migrants and refugees from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, people with disability, displaced workers, women re-entering the workforce, veterans, ex-ADF personnel and their families. And can I say to the organisation, Mr CEO, to you and your team, congratulations and thank you very much on behalf of Council and the community for providing that wonderful opportunity for 11 job opportunities for traineeships in upskilling people within our local region. Thank you. Okay, communications and media. Now that's been a very busy period in November. We've had 34 media releases go out, 20 media inquiries, 74 Facebook posts on social media, and the most popular post was on the 27th of November. Kingaroy Transformation Project update reached an audience of 7,995 people. Right, Council South Burnett Region Facebook page also ended the month with 7,830 likes and 8,098 followers. We had one e-news publication and 2 printed advertisements placed in South Burnett Today on the 5th of the 11th and the 19th of the 11th. Council progressed also one full-page ad in the Murgon Moments for what's on at South Burnett Libraries and one half-page ad for the region's dams. Graphical design. This is an area that often isn't known about, but I can assure you there's a lot of work goes into this. And I'd like to congratulate Coordinator Tracy and the work that she's done in that space, particularly 2020 to 26 corporate plan. The draft has commenced, and I must congratulate again the team on the quality of that production. South Burnett Regional Council's Christmas card and email signature block has also been developed, and a list of all media release inquiries and stats for November are available as an attachment to this report. Moving on to finance, as at the 25th of November 2020, Council's operating budget is currently tracking on target to meet first quarter amended budget. A revision of the second quarter operational budget has seen some movement within departments, with no change to the current predicted deficit of $4,560,800. All financial ratios are within the target benchmarks, except for the current ratio. This is trending at 4.5, which is above the target benchmark of 4, largely due to current assets being high. And I must say, as I mentioned once before, that's actually on the good side, the positive side of the ratio. So while it's trending outside the required benchmark, as said, it is considered positive as it is reflecting Council's high cash balance at this point in time. As for rates are in the process of undertaking water meeting readings for water consumption to be levied in the period 1 January 21 to 30 June 21. Council's IT department have actually designed an app for the contractor to utilise when reading the meters. This is in the test phase and will be used to read one water meter route in the Nango in conjunction with the normal paper-based reading process. During this testing, the contractor will take a photograph of each meter, which will be kept in a file and attached to the meter for verification purposes. It is envisaged that this app will replace the process of rate staff manually entering water meter readings and the need to reread high meter readings. And again, can I just acknowledge the work of our IT staff? I would like to, Mr. CEO, if we could perhaps send a letter of thanks on behalf of Council acknowledging that work. Council, that app has been developed internally. We didn't go out and pay someone to design that app. It was actually designed internally by our staff. And I think that's absolutely tremendous. And it's going to run in parallel with our paper-based system. And obviously, once that is fully tested and fully implemented, we know that it will certainly deliver significant savings in the administration of the water levy system. Onto procurement. Council procurement have finalised the applications to the refreshed tender for pre-qualified suppliers of wet hire, dry hire and road and quarry materials. Council received 12 applicants to the wet hire panel, 6 applicants to the dry hire panel and 1 applicant to the road and quarry materials panel. Evaluations have been concluded and Council will be awarding the successful applicants before Christmas under the delegation of the CEO. The Kingaroy Transformation Project team, alongside procurement, held an after-hours industry briefing for local suppliers to gain an understanding on doing business with Council for the Kingaroy Transformation Project. The industry briefing was a success with an attendance of 30+ local businesses. Procurement are working on a data cleanse of Council's vendor listings to ensure that vendors are categorised appropriately according to their industry type to enable Council to produce accurate reports and analysis on category and local spend. A Council Business Solutions consultant has been engaged to provide guidance and recommendations on Council's implementation of centralised procurement from a decentralised model. And again, the centralisation of procurement is a significant reform for Council. That body of work has started with our external advisor being involved on the ground here in Council. And I'd like to congratulate General Manager Jarvis for the work that you're doing in managing and leading that project. Thank you very much. So with that, I'll now move that my report be received by Council. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, councillors, before we vote to pass that, does anyone have any comments or questions on the report? Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the one about the traineeships, I was at Cherbourg yesterday at the TAFE graduation there, and I was approached by a Mergen High School teacher asking why we don't do school-based traineeships, because she's been told that we just don't do that. And I wasn't able to say why, and I just said I would endeavour to find out. And as you've, which is wonderful, 11 traineeships here, I'm just wanting to ask that question now while there's an opportunity. I've got one question, and then I've got some others. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Duff. Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm not sure if the message has come across that we won't do them. That's well, I say incorrect, but yeah, it's the wrong message. The First Start ones, this batch that we've put out now, are as part of our annual. We've maintained our traineeship and apprenticeship. We generally have anywhere between the 10 and 11 trainees every year, and anything up to 4 apprentices every cycle. And we've held on to that, and absolutely will continue to hold on to that. Always open to school-based traineeships. Generally, where it has, and my experience with them here, has been that we've got a spot to put them, that they're actually gaining some useful sort of qualification. But I'm happy to take the lady number? Yep, yeah, please, afterwards. And yep, no, and I'll put PNC onto them and we'll have a yarn, because the school-based ones are the ones we do them independently of this other program any case. So yeah, happy to chat. Oops. Why?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, she said that they've got students very interested in library, parks and gardens and mechanics, and she was really, obviously had whoever she approached at the counter gave her the wrong information, because she was surprised. So I'm really pleased to hear what you've said, CEO Mark. Yeah, awesome. Am I good for another question? Thank you. I'm just wanting to, I know it wasn't raised here, but I just wanted to know, we did have at the July meeting the councillors' mileage remuneration, and I did ask for some guidelines to be put back on when it did go through as a recommendation. I'm just wondering what happened with the remuneration guidelines. That's just a question. Yep, thank you.
That one I own totally. It's on my very long list of things to do. Actually, we've got a series of data from what you guys have all been claiming. Actually, finding someone else that's got a set of procedures similar to that is where I got bogged down with it. But yeah, it is in queue and it will be done.
Sorry to hog the microphone. Now, this is another, I've got 3 questions and I actually sent them through questions on notice. So that was just to do around procurement. So the first question, and it's based around a recent issue that it was brought to my attention that there was some pipes purchased in Haley Street for a Wondai job, and some businesses felt that they didn't get an opportunity to quote. So I just wanted to know, and these are the questions that I'm asking, is it possible to change, and no, I guess no one because they haven't got the policy in front of you, but I've got documented 5.3 in the first paragraph and dot point, council officers must give consideration to and provide a fair and reasonable opportunity for local suppliers to tender for council business opportunities rather than encouraged to. So use the word must, that they must actually give those locals a consideration. And the second one was in the second paragraph, I would like to know if it can be changed to council officers must notify and provide an opportunity for all local suppliers under SBRC established arrangements to provide a quote in accordance with 5.3.1 below, rather than must invite the minimum local supplier quotations. So what I'm suggesting there is that rather than just a minimum number, because in one amount you're only required to get 2 quotes and the other 3 quotes, is it possible that in both those cases that everybody gets a chance to have a look at it? If they don't want to quote, well, so be it, but at least they get the opportunity. And as we have that list, I'm just wondering, is it too much to actually send that email out? And the third one was if we could have those proposals put into a draft to be circulated, and perhaps if everyone's in agreement.
Councillor Duff, yeah, thanks. If I could just interject.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll just ask Mr CEO to respond. I believe the matter is well and truly in hand. Is that correct?
Take it councillor didn't read her email yesterday. Yeah. So the questions on notice came in on Monday, so I missed this agenda. But here's one we prepared earlier. The centralised procurement work that the Mayor referred to in his portfolio study is addressing this exact issue. When we spoke about it the other day, there's a lot of elements in common. We just need to make sure that we tick the legislative compliance stuff with local procurement so that we don't trip over anything. This will all come back to the January meeting. So it's a little bit short to get it on. It won't be ready for the December general, but it will be at the January general meeting. And you've got an email reply yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, Mr CEO. I can confirm that Councillor Duff was very busy out and about the field yesterday, and like myself, I don't think I've checked my emails in the last 2 days, but we've all been busy councillors, have we, out and about? But thank you very much, Mr CEO. And good question, Councillor Duff. I know there's a lot of conversation out in the community about this, and we certainly as a council want to make sure that as far as we possibly can, we are giving all of our local suppliers right across the region at least the opportunity to submit a quotation. So thank you, Mr CEO. Pleased to see that that's been brought into the January ordinary meeting, and we'll look forward to having some conversations about that leading up to that meeting and getting some more community feedback. So thank you, Councillor Duff. Thank you, Mr CEO, and thank you, Manager Susan, for the work you're doing in this space as well. Just in terms of the guidelines on the travel, again, Mr CEO, thank you for picking that one up, and I understand you've got a long list, but we'll look forward to seeing that. I'd imagine sometime in the new year we'll get back to that one. So thank you. Okay, right. I think Councillor Shoemaker had a light on. Over to you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Duff, for raising the procurement questions, because there's certainly some areas that I've been thinking about. So I look forward to the January meeting. Definitely, I think there's some great work to be done there, and I'm pleased to hear that we are engaging a specialist to help us with that process. That I think that will be those third-party eyes are really helpful in this kind of space to bring back some industry expertise in this area. I just wanted to ask, I see in your report you talked about the data cleanse, and I just wanted to better understand that process. Is that something we're doing internally? And does that mean that, it says here, and you mentioned we're reviewing all of the categories, so does that mean that we contact each of those suppliers to confirm their category listing on our database? Or could we just have a little bit of clarification around how the data cleanse process works? Because I see that hugely beneficial going forward. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. All of the concept of centralised procurement is being looked at as we speak. With the view to January, we will be workshopping changes to the procurement policy in line with Council's wishes, and as CEO Marcus alluded to, within our legislative responsibilities. The data cleanse that, to my knowledge there, from an operational side, Councillor, is that, yes, the procurement staff go through in cleanse to see who's current and who's not current. Lots of times they do ring people and say to them, you know, your certificate of currency is making you ineligible for contractual work, or so they do actively engage with the locals in that way. But yeah, so that's basically what the data cleanse is about, and also to make sure that there's businesses on there that have either left the region or it's just tidying it up. That's all that basically means. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, GM Suze. I think that's really important. I just, when it comes to this project and the Felix system in itself, I know we've had a lot of feedback about that, and I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity through this process to get some on-the-ground feedback from local suppliers? I know we've had a number of conversations in different forums and things, but about the Felix system in itself and how its usability and these sorts of things.
Thanks, Councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. That's under discussion as well as part of this review, Councillor, because there again, we've had conflicting feedback there from some local providers saying it's difficult to use, others like the system. So that's again under full review. The whole organisational, our whole procurement and purchasing is being refreshed, new culture, new change, and that will all be, it'll be workshopped in consultation with the councillors, and we'll also have a committee going forward, and everything, yes, it's getting right down to the bones. We're refreshing the whole lot.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker and General Manager Jarvis. And this has clearly been identified by you as us as a council as a priority. And I must acknowledge Mr CEO and General Manager Jarvis for responding so well in really addressing this. We've had a few turns at redeveloping and refining the policy, and there's a further body of work happening. So very much look forward to seeing the recommendations that come back from that. Thank you. Okay, well, those in favour of acceptance of the report, thank you all. Rightio, let's move on to 6.2, which is adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Customer Service Charter. That can be found at page 20. And I might just hand over to, did you want to provide some commentary leading into this one? Thank
Can
you.
start, Mr Mayor, if you'd like. This one is something that's been in the operational plan and in Council's book for a little while, so it's getting to the point of adoption. It also, once it goes through today, it's looking at, we'll circulate it around the organisation again and bring it back to the general meeting, because one of the things we want to clearly make sure is that everyone understands what's in the charter and its timeline. So yeah, so that little bit of a internal discussion, and then it comes back for final adoption. We had some feedback on it, and the Mayor certainly also gave feedback in the last consultation phase, and we've tried to make those amendments in there so they're Linnell, can you bring up the draft? They can be seen. There was a fair bit of discussion about timelines for response, and these are, if I can go, acknowledgement of receipt of the documentation, and the first draft that was circulated had, I think, 3 different sets of timelines in it, 2, 5 and 10. So we've put the 2, 5 and 10 as the option for council in there to settle on one. Everyone is very much on the same page. Acknowledgement as far as 10 days for a phone call, for example, is too long. Discussion about 2 clear business days for a return call to acknowledge receipt of the call. It would probably not resolve the issue unless it was a simple issue, but there will be some of them that would be. 5 business days for a formal acknowledgement to get out. Anyway, yeah, happy to have the discussion as to where council wants to sit as its service standard. But this should be the last stage, hopefully today, of getting the draft finalised and then to the January meeting for adoption. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. I know you've done a lot of work personally being involved in leading this process with your team. So I'd like to pass on our thanks to you and the senior executive team, as well as the SMT, the senior management team in this. I might just, before we go to questions, councillors, if you can just give me a little bit of time, I just want to talk through some of the elements of the charter. So if we can turn to item 3.1.2.1, which is on page 24. So that extends on from the general service principles and service standards that council's looking to implement as part of this charter, and that's the first element pertaining to telephone calls to the main council service number. And so what it says there, that in normal circumstances, a council representative will endeavour to answer a customer call within 3 minutes, having contacted the main council service number. Council regards the timely response to customer telephone inquiries as a priority customer service standard. The council's customer contact team answering calls will attempt to resolve the inquiry at the first point of contact or otherwise direct the customer to the relevant department. When transferring calls, the customer's information and the reason for the call will be relayed accurately to the relevant council representative to efficiently hand over the call. Referrals of calls to council reps are to be regarded as a priority by council representatives. To this, and council representatives are to make every reasonable effort to take such calls, and as requested by the customer contact team. If a council representative is unable to answer the customer query immediately, or the relevant department is unable to take the call, the customer's contact details will be recorded to ensure the inquiry or service request is acknowledged through a return call from the responsible department, and I must say there also that includes councillors, within 2 or 5 or 10 business days. So that's the first element to this. So we need to provide, I suppose, we need to reach a point today where we can, I suppose, clarify that. There are 3 options, councillors, in relation to those calls, 2, 5 or 10 days. So I'd like to just work through this in stages if we can, and I think we'll address that one first if we could. General Manager Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to draw your attention just to that last paragraph you read there where it says that service request is acknowledged through a return phone call. We actually workshopped that with our customer service team as well as our SMT, and they suggested that it be included in their or preferred form of contact. So some people prefer to be contacted via email. They don't like telephone calls. They won't answer their phone. So if we, with council's permission, include that in the policy as well, either by telephone or their preferred form of engagement, because on our forms we do have there what is your preference, and they tick either email, telephone, fax, whatever.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. Just so we can make a note on that, Mr. CEO, and make that modification. Thank you. That's an important point. Thank you. Okay, councillors, 2, 5 or 10 days on returning phone calls. Councillor Duff, you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think that to me, 2 would be absolutely reasonable, because otherwise, if you waited 5, like if you had 5 days, by the time you waited 5, you'd have accumulated so many others. Like I'd like to think that we were efficient enough that we could do it in 2 days. And just my other question through you, Mr. Mayor, is when you say other forms of media, other forms like email, phone, does that include like messaging and Facebook messaging, or is it, so are we prepared to get back to them on every type of media, or is it just emails, fax and phone?
Social media is included on this. I'll put Manager Carolyn here. I'm not exactly sure on the form what the specifics are. I do know that there is like a telephone, email. I'm not sure whether the form allows us email contact. Would you know that?
Could I just,
Susan, if I could jump in before Carolyn, just social media is a totally different beast. We do what we can with social media. We advise on our terms and conditions on the page. I'd have to, without pulling it up in front of me, that it's only monitored during business hours. Now, staff do go above and beyond as far as this space, and people, myself included, try and keep an eye on it on the weekend, but it's just not possible. Plus also, if someone goes to a social media page and says, this is part of the problem with social media, they may go to a different community page or go somewhere and say, oh, water pipe's broken in X. It actually takes longer to get back to us than a direct call. So social media, we do what we can, but I wouldn't be in favour of putting a service stand in and saying, oh, we'll respond to every social media request. I just don't think we'd be able to do it, easily. Yeah, we do our best we can when we're aware of it, but a lot of the social media commentary we aren't aware of if it's on our council page. And I mean, we very much allow very open comment. The only time is we've had cause, again, just recently, I oversaw this. Personal abuse, all the normal ones, is not tolerated. So people who start to drift down that line, we'll let a thread go, but at the moment it starts to, then it's pulled up. So that's really where it's regulated. If someone sends in a social media message on the weekend and says water pipe's broken X, there is just no guarantee that anyone will see it until for a period of time. That's the problem with it. They're best off at the after hours number. But yeah, if that helps with the social media.
yeah, thanks very much, Mr. CEO. And if I could just add, working in professional services in the private sector, the standard certainly is not to engage with customers or clients through social media, be it through Facebook, Twitter, any platforms, and certainly not including Messenger. So that is not the industry norm. That is not the norm in practice out in the private sector, and I think that's for very good reasons. You will, if we refer to 3.1.4. It does say in the second paragraph there, it confirms what Mr. CEO has said, that council will do our best to respond to such during office hours, but not actively outside of these hours. It also then goes to say that requests for service, for example, should be via telephone, email, or by writing to council at our postal address. So I think that is clarified in the policy. Could I say, as one of the councillors, I would discourage any move towards promoting the use of social media as a means of communicating with council. I don't think any of my colleagues would disagree on that. At this point in time, it certainly isn't something that's an accepted standard out there in the broader community. Okay, so we're back to telephone calls, 2, 5 or 10 days, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's my view in terms of feedback of this. We need to think about the types of calls that we receive and the types of requests that we receive. And I actually think perhaps we need to consider a staged approach. I say this because I've received a lot of feedback from people who live in the area who've tried to follow the right process. And one email that I've got here is from a gentleman who raised a complaint or raised a concern about something he felt was a safety issue 3 months ago, back on the 7th of September, and he's reaching out to me now because he hasn't really received a response to that. So I think
Councillor
what
Schumacher, if I can
happens-
interject, we're just dealing with the matter of telephone call response
Yeah,
timeframes at this
so,
stage. You will have an opportunity to go into those other matters in terms of service requests later. That's
I'm getting
further in
to
the
that,
agenda.
Mr. Mayor. So my point is that he's received receipt of the call, and I think what we need to think about is this was in his mind an urgent request. So I think he should have had a phone call back within 2 days because it pertained to a safety issue. But perhaps something where it's an idea or some feedback that would like to be provided rather than an actual complaint or concern about a safety aspect, or should have, if it's feedback about, for instance, I'd like a different styled chair in the park, maybe that is 10 days, 5 to 10 days, to give our staff enough time to get the information together.
Sorry,
and
Councillor
respond.
Schumacher, can I just interject? We'll come to that later if we could. We just want to deal with responding to the initial phone call at this stage and set a clear expectation for our staff. Is it 2, 5 or 10 days? So I'd like to keep this very clear. And what we're suggesting here is that someone returns the call to acknowledge that they've received the message. That's really what we're dealing with here, rather than attending to the issue with a response. Did you want to add to that, Mr. Seo? I think that's really what we're looking at here, isn't it?
Sure.
Happy to take, but I'm happy to take the feedback as well. So, yeah, very curious about that one that you've got. Yeah, because
and there's a
that
few
is
that have
too
come
long.
through.
Yeah.
I'd just like to deal with this in clear sections and stages.
Sure,
Otherwise,
Mr. Mayor.
the water's going to become very muddied here if we start to branch out into other issues. So we just focus on 3.1.2.1, please. Thank you.
So my thinking is it really depends on the calibre of the complaint or the request that comes in terms of the return phone call. So if it's something that's urgent and priority, I think we need to return that phone call within 24 hours. However, if it is something that's more around feedback or not as urgent, then perhaps, we can extend that time frame to 5 days. I say that because I know that in this report, we also had in the area of finance and resources, it says it's expected there'll be varying degrees of direct impact on financial and resource implications for departments. So I guess I'm mindful of that.
Microphone. If it's something that can wait 24 hours, that I would suggest probably needs to be a judgment call by the officers. I think what we're trying to do here is set a clear standard for that initial response and acknowledgement of the call. So we're just wanting someone to call them back to say, look, the department's received your message, and here's some guidance around the process for it being attended to, and what the time frame would be for. A general guidance as to the time frame for getting back to you. Some of those matters could take a week to deal with, some could take a month to deal with, but I think it's just getting back to the community within a reasonable period of time is all we're asking here. And I just want to clarify, I don't know that we're necessarily looking for general managers, the technical officers to ring people back within 2 days, but if we have support staff who could call back within 2 days to say, look, the department's got your message, we received it from customer contact. We're aware of it. We're dealing with it. This will be our process moving forward. This is our number. Feel free to call us back if the matter becomes more urgent, something of that nature. General Manager, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, our understanding at this stage of the policy, it's around the acknowledgement of the customers made contact with us. Fully acknowledge the Councillor Shoemaker's comments. I'd be quite interested to have a look at that myself if I could, maybe at Smogo. Just in relation to emergency stuff, there is internal processes that, so we had a busted water main the other day where that process, as soon as it's notified to council through customer contact, it actually gets accelerated through a triage period similar to out of hours. So just to give council an idea, if there's an issue out of hours, It goes to the on-call. There's a supervisor on call, then it goes to the manager, and then eventually it actually comes to me as general manager. So if there's a busted water main at 2 o'clock in the morning and no one answers, my phone actually rings, and it does happen from time to time. So even internally, we have that process as well to triage those emergency things. I do take in the councillor's thing. I would really like to have a look at that myself if I can, just to make sure internally we've got internal process. In regards to the tech officers that return the call, what happens in that stage in my area particularly is that it either will be an administration team that will call, or will be one of the tech officers to acknowledge that and just find out more details if we need to. The actual time for resolution could be variable inside that, Mayor, if I may.
Thanks, General Manager. I think you've really clarified, articulated well there what the message I was trying to communicate is that this is really just about setting clear expectation as to the initial response. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for raising that concern on that particular matter, and we'd certainly be grateful if we could have that followed up and some feedback to the councillor as to what could have given rise to that.
Yes, well, based on that conversation and the extra information provided, I actually think 2 days is fair and reasonable for all requests, because to be honest, a lot of people get a receipt, an email receipt from our customer service team who say this is the request number, and that, in my experience in using the customer search system, has come through within the day in which I lodged the request. So I'm actually fully supportive of 2 days in that sense. And of course, a clause that there is some judgment in which the technical officer or person receiving that request may engage in further resolution of the complaint or concern put forward.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. General Manager Jarvis. Councillor
Thanks,
Jarvis.
Mr Mayor. Now, I'd just like to reiterate what the Mayor and GM Meehan was saying. This is more, the 2 days is more, you'll still receive your email response to say that we've received the phone call or the complaint or request for service. And this is more a courtesy to ring and say, Mrs. Smith, thank you for, bringing this to our attention. It's been handed to the department, and someone from the technical group will contact you within the week there. So it's more just courteous and just respect for our customers. That's the intent of that section.
Thanks, General Manager. Thanks for that feedback, Councillor Shoemaker, as well. Do any other councillors wish to speak to this particular section of the policy, of the Charter? Not at this stage. Well, councillors, Councillor Shoemaker suggesting and Councillor Dove suggesting that the 2 days for a courtesy return call, acknowledging that the message has been received by the department and giving a little bit of guidance, information as to the process moving forward. So we take 5 and 10 out, Liddell, and we'll make that the 2 days. Oh, we can't edit that on screen, but we've got that marked up for the 2 days. So we'll put that there, and we'll move to accept this recommendation at the end. So at this stage, we just want to work through some of the detail, and then we can wrap it all up in one fell swoop at the end. So we'll move on then to 3.1.3, which is written correspondence. And again there, we're dealing with a case where, so written correspondence was received. Once received, it's issued with a reference number, and then the inquiry or service request will be acknowledged in writing by the responsible department within 2, 5 or 10 days, providing the name of the responsible officer and an anticipated time frame for a resolution. General Manager Jarvis, just there again, it says will be acknowledged in writing. Should we open that up to the customer's preferred method of communication again? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that'd be prudent to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Similar to
Yes.
to your comments in relation to returning phone calls, we'd identify the client's, the customer's preferred method of communication. Because if we receive that in writing from them, would we then call and determine that? What would work best for the staff, do you think? Probably seeking some advice here, General Managers. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, God.
One of the things, Mr. Mayor, and it might sound like I'm a little bit off track, but this is geared up for my 20 cents worth. I'll throw it out there for the councillors to start. So the written response is no longer than 5 days for the acknowledgement. Now, councillor before, and this applies to councillors and ourselves from the way the policy reads. Councillor Duff, we were talking before about exchanges of emails which sit outside this. We've been wall-to-wall meetings for this week, so 2 days, 48 hours. We've got disaster management tomorrow, so by the time I do my correspondence and acknowledgement will be Friday. So anything that came in Tuesday in 2 days would be outside of the policy to start with if we went 48 hours. So if I may put my pitch forward for the written responses is a maximum of 5 days to acknowledge. And then that way we can clear the days and get that acknowledgement. Even signing of correspondence, as silly as this sounds, but again, it's good to have this discussion. By the time you go from wall-to-wall meetings, half the time it's after hours when I stay back and sign the things that are in the tray or go through the tray. Then they won't, particularly if it's a postback, so they won't go through the mail system to the next business day. So 5 for me. The other, and where I was going, or started and then going in a roundabout circle to it. So this is what comes through the formal circumstances. My experience, not just here but elsewhere, is where we have a lot of trouble is email is just the death of us. I will say that in the start because keeping track of them is because they're not going through the formal system. And I get the frustrations, I really do get the frustrations, and this is where the effort and the concentration is in trying to make it better. So things that come through in info at, often I'll be here today, we've said disaster management, we've got an exercise which will be pretty much all day tomorrow. Someone emails me direct, it actually, by the time I clear the emails, it actually takes longer for me to send it to info so it can go through the system to be registered than what it does if they went straight to info at in the first instance. Same with the customer request staff or putting it into a customer request. So I think we continue, just to share thinking, we continue to improve the formal processes so that they're absolutely Mickey Mouse and they're going back. And then once we get these right, if I can use that terminology, then we look at the more informal processes and think, okay, what can we do to tidy them up? But we get the formal system working absolutely Mickey Mouse so that when one is missed, it's the absolute exception rather than a common complaint. So that's where I'd like to go.
Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually, somewhere in this policy, I'm not sure if this is the right place for it, but I would like something to acknowledge that councillors, as councillors, we cannot get involved in operational matters, and by all means we can pass on the feedback, but if you are contacting a councillor in relation to an operational matter, that we are quite restricted by the response in which we can give. So I'm hearing CEO Mark, my inbox has not sat below, 300 emails for as long as I can remember. And, I have found emails, because we get so many, that have been important that I've missed in the running through of them, and catching up onto those. So I just think as councillors, we need to set a service standard in this. If councillors are included in customer service charter, there needs to be something that clearly defines what a councillor can actually do in terms of a customer request that comes into the system.
It's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff?
I was just going to say, through you, Mr. Mayor, when I get a customer request that's operational, or any customer request for that matter, I just forward it straight through to customer request. So if someone sends me an email, it just goes forwarded straight on, and I let them know that I forwarded this on to the relevant staff. So that's how I deal with them. I don't try to answer their requests, because that's all they're using you as a tool to get it to somewhere else. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to extend on that?
Yeah, look, and absolutely, I completely understand, and that's the process. I think the problem is that you then are not kept informed about the response that's actually given to that customer. So sometimes you are, some departments are very good at it, sometimes you're not, and they fall off the radar, and that customer keeps coming back to you. So I guess what I'm asking is, this is a council policy, so I would just like something in there to acknowledge councillors' roles when it comes to customer requests. So certainly if the process is that we forward them onto the customer request system, that's fine. I guess I just want to make it clear for our community in terms of what a councillor's actual role is when it comes to receiving a customer request. You'll note on my voice message and in a lot of the conversations that I have with constituents about concerns or complaints, we have discussed as councillors, referring people back to the customer request system. So what I'm finding is I'm actually receiving feedback from customers who've followed that process and are coming back to say, no, there's still problems here and I haven't had a proper response. So I guess I just want it to be really clear in terms of what a councillor's role is in this policy when it comes to responding to customer requests, because we've had discussions about the fact that we as councillors actually, it has to go through the proper system, and that it's not our roles to be customer service liaison officers taking requests all the time. So something in that regard.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Look, it might well be that we need to clarify the objective of this policy. It's a policy that is written for the organisation. General Manager, I'm wondering whether if we go back to 3.1.2.1, where we actually make reference to councillors, whether we should consider taking the word councillor out as such, so that this doesn't then apply to councillors in any shape or form, but that it is actually seen as a document for the operational organisation. So then when we move to 3.1.3, you'll note there is no reference to councillors as such in responding to emails and responding to written requests. And so then it would be accepted practice that doesn't necessarily need to be enshrined in policy, that where a councillor receives a request from a customer in relation to a service matter, it's accepted practice that gets forward through the appropriate system, whether that be by submitting a snap, send and solve, Councillor Duff, whether that be by what would be my preference, as I've indicated previously, or by referring the customer on to make the phone call, to submit the email, or simply by passing their email on. So if we can get that clarity today, so all councillors are on the same page and we all understand that that is our involvement in the process, is simply to forward that on to customer contact and allow the policy to do its work, allow the staff to follow the procedures that they've got in responding, but certainly leaving the door open for those residents to come back to you if they feel that they haven't received the service that they're comfortable with. Would that be a better position to be in if we take councillors out of this as such?
Yes, I absolutely agree, because when it comes to the operational matters of council, councillors actually have no jurisdiction in that area. So I think it gets messy and grey when we start putting council laws in this process. We have already acceptable guidelines and requests for information framework. So yeah, there are other functions in which we as councillors can use to get the information that we need.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Schumacher, and thank you for referring us back to the acceptable request guidelines. That really is the policy under which we operate in dealing with customers and passing information on, in seeking information from the organisation. I would like to just add support for what CEO has said, and I think coming back to industry norms, if I can use that term, 5 days for responding to written correspondence is probably around where the industry norm is anyway. The only matter to be considered is, and we've got to be careful here about resourcing, is did we want to actually have someone pick up the phone and say, look, we've received your letter or your email. Now, the problem with that is that a lot of these emails will come in directly to the department or directly to the CEO or directly to us. So that could actually put work on our technical officers. What we're not wanting to do here, I think, we're certainly not looking to load up more work for our technical officers by having to spend all their time ringing people back with no resolution at that point in time. So I'm quite comfortable leaving with this, just leaving it as it is and making it 5 days, but open to feedback from other councillors. Councillor Duff?
I agree with you on that one, Mr Mayor, because I think that sometimes when they send an email, they don't give you your phone number, and that's challenging too. So if it's an email, I think that sending back another email is probably the better way to go, rather than trying to search around and try and find a phone number, or even send another email asking for their phone number. Then it starts to get complicated.
Councillor Potter, you had your light on, sorry. Did you want to add anything to this one?
I just wanted to follow on from CEO's comment before, and also Councillor Shoemaker's, with regards to the number of emails, and yourself, Mr Mayor, because we all do get a large number of emails all the time, and I think to put us into this process would be really hard. But I do believe that 5 days for the public to receive an email back from an email is quite sufficient.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Does anyone disagree with Councillor Henson?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. No, I don't disagree, but I think one thing we want to take into consideration as well in this modern era with not only phones and phone service and technology, but email accounts. There's a lot of people don't check emails, but on top of that, there's a lot of companies that have service periods, and I, for one, experienced that the other day where my email account was under service implications for up to almost 3 days, 2 days. So we want to be aware of that as well, that 5 days is fine, but within that period there can be some hiccups along the way with serviceability.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Henson. Councillor Shoemaker, I sent you an email the other day and I got an automatic reply. And the automatic reply said, thanks for sending me your email. I'll get back to you within, I don't know if you said 5 days or something. I love that automatic reply facility so that if I then am a customer or ratepayer and I send it an email, the system automatically sends a reply. It says, thanks very much. I've received your email. I will endeavour to get back to you within 5 business days. Perhaps that's a practice that we can encourage councillors and staff to adopt so that, well, staff already do it. So I thought it was really, I was quite excited to get your email back. Thank you. And I'll now look to try and find one of the, I'll have to reach out to the IT guys to show me how I can perhaps do a similar thing. Thank you. Councillor, Mr CEO, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, when we encourage and request staff to do out of office when they're on leave, so that there's same thing. If I'm away for a long weekend or for whatever reason, public holiday, you put the out of office on, saying if it's important, ring this number. If it's not, if it can wait till my return to the office. So that's very much encouraged now, and a lot of the staff and more of the staff are putting the out of offices on. So that's going through. The one point I just want to come back with the conversation on email. Email is seriously, I think, the death of the modern world, is my own personal opinion. But this policy is geared to our formal. So use me as the example. You send me an email, I won't send you a reference number. I don't generate a reference number. I have no ability to generate a reference number. What I would do, I send it through to ECM for registration or customer service for registration. We've got several, and the policy is written for the different formal mechanisms we've got. And if I may give that a pitch again, that's where we're trying to drive a lot of this. So we got those automated systems so that we can acknowledge, we can give a number, and you can track. Personal, if a resident sends an email to staff X personally, that's, as I said, that's the ones that get lost quite often, because if they're not checked, if there's nothing, if they don't forward them on, there is, when it becomes a problem and it comes up to my attention, just for example, I go looking for information on what had happened, and there isn't anything because it's all been personal correspondence between the two parties, which I don't necessarily have visibility on. So the more that we get them through PNR or customer requests or CRMs, just for getting the record system or the customer request system, the better it is. And that way we can hit these targets absolutely into 5 days on acknowledgement and follow-up as far as those formal systems. And the informal systems where direct email between parties is much more problematic. The other one, if I may, and I'll stand corrected, Manager Carolyn, but I don't think one of the problems when we have and I take Councillor Shoemaker's point very well, because one of the problems we have when the councillor or third party sends in a request, the primary registration has to go to somebody, not some people. So if, Mayor, if you send it in and I pass it on on your behalf, it's either got to be tagged to me or tagged to you. It can't be tagged to both of us. So someone will get the response, but the other party won't. And so it's not third party is a bad thing, but that's, I think, one of the part of the frustrations with councillors forwarding them in is depending on who's entering it, whether they tag it to the councillor or they tag it to the individual property. And so then the response goes back to the individual. You don't know what's going on, or the response will go back to you and the individual may have to go to you to get the information. So that one, the system isn't, and I'll stand corrected, the system is not able to tag two primaries.
Yeah, thanks, Mr CEO. Okay, so I guess, Councillor Duff, did you want to add anything here that's going to be productive to the conversation? Your light's on.
I was just going to just say how great I think that the system currently is with regards to you send something through in that info and search, and you get a response back immediately. So like, there's no issue. I don't see any issue with that. I think you were more talking about getting back to the customers with a bit more information rather than just, yes, we got that.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. I think just going back to making sure if you've got that out of office facility set, if you're away on leave too, or if you've set your mobile phone to say, look, I'm away on leave for a period of time, it's important that when you get back to work, that staff remember General Manager Meehan to take that off their phone or off their email.
I'm just going to say, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I've actually tried to do it twice, and a gentleman left a message on my phone and said you're still on leave, and I've had, yep. I'm at the stage where I've got to buy a new phone because it's easier.
Thanks. That was just a little bit of fun. A little bit of fun I'm having with General Manager Meehan. It was all tongue in cheek. Yeah, Councillor Potter, you've got your lighter. What are your thoughts?
no, sorry.
We've got lights going off everywhere. It really is Christmas time, isn't it? With these red lights going off everywhere. I feel like I'm in the Christmas chamber. Okay, so look, councillors, I think there's a really common sense position we've found here that 5 days is the appropriate standard. I think it meets industry norms. I think it's an acceptable time frame. We go with 5 days, and that if we could just perhaps pass on to the general managers, and I note that GMMA couldn't be with us this morning, but to encourage staff to use that auto reply facility where they feel comfortable doing so, just to say, look, thanks, got your email. I'll endeavour to email you back within 5 days or something like that. Would be nice just to have that. I think that's a really a good service to have. So, okay, let's move on now. Social media, of course, we've dealt with. Does anyone have any issues with 3.1.4? I think we've had that conversation, haven't we? 3.1.5, where someone presents to council with a straightforward request for factual and easily accessible information, forms or general advice will be accommodated at the time of inquiry, so it goes without saying. Requests which require follow-up or response from another department will be logged as a customer request in the business system, and a reference number for the request will be provided to the customer at that time. Now, of course, to my understanding, that's what's happening now, and it's working very well. And that the request will be acknowledged by the relevant department. I think we just need to take /councillor out there, by the relevant department within 2, 5 or 10 days. And it just goes on to say, where a request is referred to a department, the relevant department provide the name of the responsible officer and an anticipated time frame for resolution. I do believe that's happening at the moment as part of our system, but correct me if I'm wrong, general managers, that information, the name of the officer and the anticipated time frame for resolution, is that being communicated back under our current templates?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think to be honest, there's probably a little bit of inconsistency in this space. So our suggestion would be is that possibly an anticipated time frame or acknowledge the process in which it may be resolved might be a good way to do it too, because some of them will be quite different. So some of the complaints that obviously we get in our area, it may that you actually can't put a time frame on when it will be resolved, but I think it's important that if we can't do that in good customer service, you actually tell the person how it's going to go through a process to be resolved. That would be my only other suggestion, Mayor, in that space.
Thanks, General Manager. So just looking at that then, if we go 1, 2, 3, so the third clause down, third sentence down, sorry, in 3.1.5, if we were to put a comma after responsible officer, and then so it said, providing the name of the responsible officer, comma, an anticipated time frame for resolution and /or the process for attending to the matter or something of that nature. Would that satisfy that?
Yeah, I think so, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a great idea. The only thing I would also do, if we could just go up, Linnell, is I would mirror that in the written one as well. So just if you go up, see that one there, same process there. So we, for our point of view, we would tell, because for our case it might be that we're going to go in and do an inspection on site first and meet the person, and then so if you mirrored the same, it's a consistent process. Then so.
In item 3.1.3, the third paragraph, would be, again, similarly, we'd put a comma after responsible officer, and then we'd say anticipated timeframe for resolution and or process for resolution. So if we can perhaps just reword that, General Manager, Manager Carolyn, in both 3.1.3 and 3.1.5. Thank you. That's a good point. Thanks, General Manager. Okay, on to the timeframe then, councillors.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Oh, sorry, you've got your light on, Councillor Potter. My apologies.
You're right. I'm just regarding with when we do get some requests over the counter for people to see the councillors. So would that be include? Like I know we were going to take councillor out here, but when people come to the front counter requesting a meeting with the councillors via the front office, would that be included in this section as well?
Look, I think if seeking an appointment or contact with a councillor is a matter to be dealt with as would any other matter, then I would have thought that would just come in under the policy. So whether they're passing it on to the relevant department in this case, it might be that you're passing it on to the councillor as such. So I would have thought that the same standards would apply in that circumstance, yeah. So 2, 5 or 10 days for that. So what we're suggesting here is that the department, we take the word councillor out, but that it will be relogged. So for example, in your case, Councillor Potter, someone comes to the counter, they request to see or speak with a councillor, that will be logged as a customer request. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, staff, as a customer request at that time and then put through the appropriate system. Is that practical, Mr CEO? Can that work in terms of keeping everything streamlined through our system?
If I'll yield to those who deal with the front counter much more, Manager Carolyn, in a minute, but I would think if they, for all the ones that I've got, normally if someone comes to the front counter rings through to the office and one of the staff talk to them directly, and then an appointment's arranged or alternative arrangements are made. Now, if there is no one available, it comes through as a CRM in that case, and then the follow-up call or appointments made. Now, that's my experience and used to it. I think General Manager Meehan's point before is that maybe part of the problem that we have, and where this will address it as a set standard, as we've been wanting to go for some time, is that there's inconsistencies within the organisation of how it's dealt with in different sections. And so this will give us a very good benchmark, whatever the decision is to, okay, that's what we're aiming at, and that's organisational wide.
Thanks, Mr. Seath. I think that's really clarifies it. And so what we're talking about here is, in that regard, is that requests which require follow-up or response from another department will be logged. Did you want to leave the word "or councillor" will be logged in that? Take it out? Yeah, okay. Will be logged. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Potter? Are you still concerned that perhaps there isn't a process, a clear process? You happy with that? General Managers, are we comfortable with that? Yeah. Customer contact, comfortable with that? General Manager Jarvis? Okay, so 2, 5 or 10 days for the department receiving the request. So what we're saying here is that a reference number for the request will be provided to the customer at that time, and Councillor Duff shared with us how that works very well, but then the request will be acknowledged by the relevant department within 2, 5 or 10 days. General Manager's probably seeking a little bit of guidance on this as to what works practically.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, for my 2 cents, for these ones where we're offering a process for resolution, both this one and above, we would aim to, my personal view, given the current workload, I would go for 10 days on written correspondence and in person. That's obviously they would be acknowledged prior to that, but to actually provide them a process for resolution in a time frame, 10 days would be in other councils I've worked at, it's been 10 days, where we can say, so they would still get your acknowledgement to say, yes, we've received your request inside the 2, which is what we've said, or the phone call, or the 5 days, sorry, I think it's 5 days for the written one above, but to actually be given a process for resolution, either in person or in writing, 10 would be ideal for us. That it would allow us to either have a proper review in a couple, so we could get the request in by the time it gets through the system to us, 5 days for us to acknowledge and say, hey, thank you very much, we've got your request, and then that would then allow us to bring that straight into process to say, well, either we've got the work programmed, or we'll be scheduling it, or we will arrange the time to have an inspection with you and on site. So I would just say to that too, 10 days would be the maximum timeframe too inside that period.
Thanks, General Manager. That then has implications, doesn't it, also for 3.1.3, where we've resolved to provide a response in terms of the reference number within 5 days, but then we go on to say the acknowledgement by the department within 2, 5 or 10 days, providing the name of the officer, anticipated time frame and or process for resolution. So we need to be consistent there, would we not?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that I'm clear and on the same page. This is not, the policy is written not for the resolution. So broken water main's a bad example, but I would like a speed bump in front of my road, which is one. So the initial response comes in, so the automated or the customer service guys generate a number, send it back, it's then flicked onto the department. And I'm happy to be corrected, but mine is that the department then writes back and says, "Dear Mr. Pitt, thank you very much for your correspondence. This will be being looked after by our technical services branch. I write with reference to your correspondence data reference number . This is being looked after and action by our technical services department. Mr. Darcy will be in contact with you in due course to progress your issue." Boom. This isn't we're going to put a speed bump or not put a speed bump in. This is purely who do I talk to and what's my number, so that if I want to follow up, I can go to that person. That's how it's written, not to resolve the issue in 5 days, because that would be, a lot of those would cause no end of trouble because you won't get them fixed in 5 days. Yeah.
It's providing advice to the customer as to the process or the method to go through to have the matter resolved, isn't it? It's that letter that comes back to say, well, this is the process. We've received your request, this is the process. So it's about, is 5 or 10 days for response to that.
Oh, sorry, my thing's still on, but a speed bump in a road would take 12 months by the time you went through the studies, design, council agreed to, so yeah.
Yeah, and so just clarifying, so we're not talking about resolving the matter, we're talking about providing a response to the customer in relation to the process and an anticipated time frame. So it does talk there about anticipated time frame and then keeping them informed. Yeah. Councillor Shoemaker, I can see you're thinking long and hard about this. What are your thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've been in customer service and complaint management for as long as I can remember. So I do have some feedback in relation to this. And my feedback is that there are not enough conversations. And what I would like to see at this point in time is the actual department phone the customer to introduce themselves or say, this is the person who will be taking care of your complaint or your concern or your request. The reason why I say this is because I think there are too many letters and too many emails, and people are getting lost in that process. That is the feedback that I'm getting from the ground. We get an email and then we get another person, and the frustration comes from actually not being able to speak to somebody, not being able to say, this is the person, I can phone Aaron, Aaron's got my request, Aaron is dealing with it, I'm confident that Aaron has received it. At the moment, what happens is there's no necessarily face to a name, and then what happens is, so they've made the request, they've gotten the response from customer service, which is excellent. That is state of the art. What the customer service team does is absolutely excellent. They log the request, they send the receipt. It goes on to the department, but my concern is the department, the customer feels at that point in time, the feedback is the customer feels somewhat lost then in that system. And I think that more conversations would help improve the reputation of our council. And I think this is about a service standard, and the feedback I've received is that, for instance, if the request goes on to a council officer and they get back an email that says this councillor officer has gotten your request and they'll respond to you, and then what happens is they get back a letter that says from that councillor officer with all the information about the request. So there's not enough actual conversations. I think there could be a lot of things resolved with a conversation. So I would like to see some sort of provision where we are encouraging our departments to pick up the phone at this point and just introduce themselves. My name's Kirsty. I've got your request. I'll be in contact with you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. It's something I'd overlooked to mention, but I'm pleased you raised that. It's the way of the world, isn't it, that big organisations have gone down the process of systemising everything and taking the people element out of it. That becomes really challenging, though, when you live and work in the local area and you're the local council, you're not the state or your federal government, you're not a big corporation or a big federal department that can necessarily, for want of a better term, get away with that. It's really challenging for us to get to not feel the reputational damage from that when it happens. And I had an experience like that similarly with myself before I came into council. It was one of the things that motivated me to do so was where, as a practicing accountant, I had a client that wanted to do something with council, and I contacted council and left a phone message for someone to call me back. And then 10 days later, I got a letter, and it didn't even have a name on the bottom of the letter. It wasn't from any of the departments they're speaking of. And it's not to be critical of council, but I did feel at that time that it was a bit impersonal. I got the letter back and the letter didn't have a name on it. It just said from the department. I think it had an initial at the top, but it didn't tell me who the person was that I could communicate with. So I probably did feel as though at that point in time, maybe we could have personalised that a little bit more. We have to find a way that we can do that. And I'm really keen to hear from the general managers and Mr. CEO about what the resource implications are for that. But I am feeling very much like Councillor Schumacher that there's a need for us to try and maybe set a higher standard to what those larger corporations do and try and have that more personal contact with our local people. If we can possibly get to that point, would be ideal. Yeah, what are you thinking, General Manager?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I actually support the councillor's comments in some instances where we've often had feedback come from customers where we haven't communicated our message well. And let's be honest, there's some areas where we do really, really well and we do really good work. Particularly our unsealed road, for example, like we can turn that around so quickly. We can tell people exactly when we're going to grade. We do a really good job, and there's other areas for improvement. Some of the customer service stuff that we have in this space is a process and systems issue that inside the department itself that needs to improve. So we talked about project management the other day. There's obviously all those operational plan projects to improve our service levels, which will enable some of these things to happen. My only suggestion would be is there's probably, in my experience, I know some councils that return every call within 2 days with the details that we're talking. It actually costs them about $400,000 a year just for that service alone inside that group. Not that I disagree with the idea of it. It's around getting that happy medium, around getting a resource and particularly introducing yourself in particular. It depends on the nature of the request too, I think. And as you say before, it's around a bit of judgment. Probably just my only suggestion, Mayor, is in this case, if you have the option to possibly split them, that they are acknowledged by the department, and then within 5 days or whatever it might be, or within 10 days, where we provide that anticipated process and who that person is, but also we just put in there, not a mandatory, but we encourage that verbal contact will be made to the customer in addition to discuss their complaint by those officers where available, or a representative of the department. So in my case, it may not be the tech officers calling them, but it might be the administration team might actually ring and say, hey, look, this is the person. So I think that could be nutted out. If you do it in 5, just my personal feel, at the moment, 10 would be better, and then you could always reduce or go up depending on, if you set 5 now, I think it would be a difficult change for the organisation to make without getting some workflow and some processes together. But if we went to 10 days for that acknowledgement and give them a chance to make that phone call, it doesn't mean they're not acknowledged. They still get their acknowledgement phone call, but actually made contact by the department through their preferred method, and also encourage verbal contact as well to give them the anticipated timeframe, resolution process and all that sort of stuff. I think you would get a much better result.
Thanks, General Manager. I think there's a really clear, strong argument here for 10 days where the department has to go and investigate a matter and then get some technical work done to be able to provide a response to the client, to the customer, as to the anticipated timeframe and or process for resolution. So I'm comfortable with 10 days on that in terms of writing back to the customer and saying, look, this is the process by which it can be resolved, or this is the time frame for resolving the matter. However, picking up Councillor Shoemaker's point, I would certainly like to see us get to a point where within 2 days of the department receiving the letter, that someone picks up the phone and says, "Hi, it's Jill or it's Joe. I work in the administration of the department. We've got your customer request through from Customer Contact. You would have received a customer request number. We've referred that on to our officers, and you'll get a letter back within 10 days or something of that nature." I do feel that country people like that phone conversation. We're not as perhaps as accepting as city people of email and written correspondence. And I do feel that, yes, I've talked to all of our pensioners and they say, "Oh, I would have loved it if someone just picked up the phone and gave me a call." And just to have a lovely young lass or a lovely young lad to talk to, they often say, just to let me know what's going on, and that'll put my mind at ease that it's all being dealt with. They love that personal contact. Having said that, it does come at a cost. And so, I mean, I'm a businessman. I know that I provide that service, but I pay for it. I have a full-time client services assistant whose job is to simply do that. Ring people as soon as their information comes in and say, "Hi, got your information? Jim's going to be looking after it for you. He's the accountant looking after it, and he'll be back to you within 3 weeks. Okay? If you have any problems, just give me a call. This is my name and number," and leave it at that. Or I think that's really, really important if we can get to that point. We may need to, council, though, in doing that, look at the resourcing in the administration of our different departments to make sure that they've got the customer request staff in place to handle that so that it doesn't go to the technical staff. I wouldn't want to see the technical staff doing that. I think that would be bad business practice. I don't think you're even suggesting that, Councillor Shoemaker, are you? So if we're going to go down that path, we may have the resources in some departments, other departments may not, and if that's the case, maybe a conscious decision council has to make to say, well, if we want this service standard for our community, then we perhaps need to put on some more administration staff in certain departments and fund that and make it part of our budget priority moving forward. I would like to get to the point where we have 2 and 10 days on this. 2 days for someone from the department to ring them, not a technical officer, and then 10 days for a technical officer to get a response back, as you suggested, General Manager. We can get to that point. I think it'll do a lot to build bridges between our community and our council. It'll do a lot to build the relationship between our staff and our community, and it'll do a lot to shut down the negativity that we hear in the community that, "Oh, council's too slow getting back to you." I just think that that's a really great suggestion, that first phone call, just to say, "Hey, I work in the roads division and we've got this. One of our technical officers will look at it. It will take some time though. They'll endeavour to get back to you within 10 days. If someone hasn't, hey, feel free to call Customer Contact, ask them to put you through to Bill or whatever the admin person's name is." Keen to hear feedback on that, but I think I'd certainly love to see us get to that point if we can, yeah.
Yeah, just on the back of that, Mr. Mayor, I think the big thing that will help you achieve that, or at least move into that way, is when you do your service level review in the new year. So if you've got service standards around your parks and your roads and those sort of things, it will enable those conversations to happen with a bit more confidence. I think the organisation doesn't do as much as what the council is saying, is because there's not the answers there for those service standards. And so if you can tell someone that when you're going to look to mow that park or fix that pothole, it'll allow those staff to have confidence behind the service standard, that when we talk to you, that we can actually pass on information that is a lot more reliable, and also particularly it help those officers on that admin team have a standard where they can actually offer something for resolution as well to the customer, because it's very hard to talk to a customer when you don't have a lot of answers or give them a fixed process of how that might occur. So I think that's a really good opportunity to do that with your service levels at the same time, and then that'll allow your verbal conversations to happen with a lot more confidence.
Thanks, General Manager. I think maybe we've got to start moving down this path, and it might be that small steps. Maybe if we start off by simply having our administration staff return the call within 2 days and say, "Look, we've received this, it's come through, you should have your customer request number, just confirm you have got that." "Yes, I've got the number." "Okay, now our technical staff will deal with the matter." Now, of course, as we become more advanced with our work probing and our planning, as General Manager's saying, it might be that initial phone call, that administration person can actually provide some more information, because it can say, "Well, actually, that road is programmed to be done in December next year. But at this point in time," well, roads might not be a good example because we probably have that. But across the organisation, when we get more sophisticated with our asset management planning programs, it might be that initial phone call, we can provide more information. But at this point in time, at least to be able to give them a phone call and say, hi, Mrs. Smith, you would have received your CRN. I'm just touching base. I'm from the relevant department. Our technical officers are looking at it. Thanks very much. And we leave it at that. I think that would go a long way in keeping people happy. People just want someone to acknowledge them verbally. But yeah, good point. Thanks, General Manager. Well, we can certainly become better as time goes on. Councillor Shoemaker, and then we'll come to
I
you,
had mine on
Councillor.
before.
Oh, did you have yours
I've
on
had it on
first?
for ages.
Off you go, Councillor Duff. Sorry.
I
Sorry.
just wanted to say that I absolutely support the phone call, but I'd like to see that phone call within 5 days, because sometimes you can.
Councillor Duff, can I just interject? What I've suggested is the phone call within 2 days.
Oh.
Have you been listening? The phone call within 2 days, and that we give the technical staff 10 days to write back.
Yeah, but but I want a tech. So you're saying a technical officer will call back within 2, or just
No,
a
no,
customer?
no. Can you,
So, okay.
Councillor Duff, can I ask you just to turn your light off, please, for a moment? I want to clarify this. Okay, so what we're discussing here is the option and the resourcing implications for a administration person from the relevant department calling the customer back within 2 days of receipt of the customer request by the department. That is not a technical officer. I don't think we want to put that pressure on our technical officers. What we're saying is the technical officers will endeavour to respond within 10 days, as General Manager has suggested. So 2 days for administration to call,
Yeah, no. That's
10 days for the technical officer to
That's
respond.
right. So I'm debating that, because what I'm saying is that sometimes these requests, a lot of them, and I'm frustrated because I know that these requests could be fixed very quickly with a phone call from someone who knows what's going on. Like a lot of the requests I get are about planning issues, and all they want to know is what zone that is. And if you could just do a quick call to, Craig Patch or someone, they're going to be able to say, not Craig, Chris Duplessis, he'll say, yep, good to go. Or like, for example, if there's somebody rings up and they say there's a grader out in my area and I know they're not going to fix that drain properly, something like that, or it could be just fixed up so quickly. Whereas if they had to wait for 10 days, it's just too long. And I reckon we would speed the process up a lot with someone who actually knows, an officer, within 5 days making a phone call. I reckon you'd wipe out a big percentage of your customer requests that are getting backlogged because they could have just been fixed up. And I get frustrated with that because I know one quick phone call, I could have fixed the issue, and I got to send it through this whole process to get an outcome. And that's where I reckon it's getting bogged down in a big way.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. I guess we've got to be careful here, though, that not all matters can be resolved within 10 days. And I mean, as a professional technician practitioner myself, I'll have clients who would like to have something resolved within 10 days. I just can't get that body of work done professionally I need 10 days to do the research, to get the information together, to get back to them, and to put our technical and professional staff under pressure to get everything back out within 5 days, considering the work, the analysis that's got to be done. In all cases, I think is probably setting the bar too high at this point in time. Where we can perhaps accommodate those other matters, I'm not sure how we can factor in something that picks up those exceptions. What are your thoughts, General Manager?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the issue that the council is raising there, a lot of that happens anyway right now. What we find again is there's inconsistencies of how that happens. The fact is your policy allows, this is the maximum time frame that you're giving to staff. So keep in mind, if someone rings up the front counter and they say, in your policy here, someone rings up the front counter and they say that, look, I really want to talk to somebody about, getting my road graded while you're here or whatever it might be, the policy actually flicks it directly to the department. So they actually get the phone call within 2 days. So if you scroll back up for me, Linnell. So if someone makes contact with the customer contact team, just go up for me. Service stands, there should be one there. Referrals to council, stop there. Referrals to council representatives to be regarded as a priority by council. So if someone rings up the customer service centre, say for example, I'll give the example, the one that you've sent me yesterday, Christy picked up for me about the Geelong Bowls Club and the RCP. So the guys will program that through. What we would expect is if it's a high priority that it gets identified with the appropriate person through the customer contact team. If they can't actually do that inside that time frame of 2 days or 3 days of what the customer's got there, then it will fall back to the general standard with that. So it's around to the judgment call. In my experience, it's around to the judgment call of you allow the customer contact system to go through its process. That it's the same as a broken water main or something like. If it's something simple, the customer contact team will still send that through to the admin team, say in infrastructure. They've got to look at that within 2 days anyway, and they've got to acknowledge in less than 5. And what you need to rely on is that the organisation staff, or for example, if someone rings up and they said, look, we really want to get this road done because I've got to get cattle out and that sort of stuff, the process is still the same. That will be seen by the infrastructure staff. They will then go to Kevin and say, look, this is the issue, or they go to the tech officer, can you resolve this quicker for the person? If they can't, then the response will go back as it's 10 days for A, B and C. Yeah, so I think it's just getting the organisation training right in that space.
Thanks, Councillor Duff and General Manager Meehan. So we've got options here. I think I'd certainly like to see, in response to what Councillor Shoemaker said, that not only do we return responses to phone messages within 2 days, but where someone sends in a customer request, that someone then also gives them that nice courtesy call from administration, from that department, within 2 days. We have to consider the resourcing implications, absolutely hearing that, but that would be ideal if we can get to that point. It's not necessarily happen overnight, but if we can work towards that as an end goal. But then the decision then, if we do that, is 5 or 10 days the appropriate time frame to get a written response. I'm feeling that 10 days is appropriate. Councillor Duff, are you still uncomfortable with the 10 for 5?
I'm just wondering if we could make it 7 days.
You're already muddying the water, aren't you? Councillor Shoemaker, what are your thoughts? I'll come. Councillor Shoemaker first, thank you.
If I may, Mr Mayor, I just want to sit because I have some examples that I'd like to share with the chamber. So I am very passionate and adamant about the phone call, and I've worked in this area, and I know that if you send an email or any form of written correspondence, I know the process for getting written correspondence approved. And that is a timely matter, which I'm hearing you, GM Meehan, around the $400,000 some councils have spent, which is a guesstimate, to phone individual customers, completely hearing you. But the reality is I challenge, and I believe it would actually cost us more to send written correspondence rather than pick up the phone and make contact with some of our customers. That's my view. I also feel that a phone call helps improve the understanding with the customer around council's process, and it also helps us to build a relationship with the customer, which for me, growing up in a small country town of Blackbutt and living in the South Bennett, relationships are everything. So I absolutely am adamant about a phone call from the department. The reason I am adamant, and I would like to share this as an example, and this is not about blaming or shaming, and I'm removing all department names and names in general, but I'd like to share the experience of a constituent that shared with me. So nearly 3 months ago, on the 7th of September, I raised what I thought was a safety or urgent request in an email. The next day, on the 8th of September, I received an email with references made to your request regarding blah, blah, blah. This has been received at the blah, blah, blah department and forwarded on to the relevant officer for investigation and response. He's then said, contacting council regarding the work status. So I phoned council on the 22nd of September and spoke with ex-customer service officer. I then phoned again on the 13th of October and spoke with Y customer service officer, who were unable to contact the relevant department about the work. I then phoned council on the 5th of November and spoke to ex-customer service officer, who was unable to contact the department re the work, but advised they had no access to the supervisor's work scope, but would look into it and send an email regarding the status. No email was received. Later that day, I phoned council again and spoke to another customer service officer, who advised council's notes to say the supervisor says 2 to 3 weeks to carry out the works. Each time I contacted council, I indicated I was available to discuss or clarify with the supervisor to ensure my request was correct for the works being planned. On the 25th of November, I drove past and saw council undertaking the work. I attempted to speak to the council rep, but he was busy in the work zone, so I didn't want to create a safety issue by walking up to him. So I spoke to another person in the area and asked about the request I'd put forward.
He said he was unaware of the issue that I'd tabled, and he said he'd pass on my comments to the council representative on site. It suffice to say, I'm hugely disappointed with council's manner of correctly responding to a request from the public. It appears when an email is received by council, a work order is raised with text to what the council person thinks may be needed. It's then passed on to the work supervisor. Despite a number of times contacting council's number, no council person contacted me to discuss whether the work was planned and what in relation to what I had requested. I realise council may not always be aware of safety issues in the region, so I'm requesting you pass this on to the relevant people who may be able to implement a more effective process so that when a safety issue is raised by the general public, it's dealt with as requested. I'd appreciate you respond with an outcome. So that's an email I received from a local constituent, and I have many others that I can share, many that I've collected over the last 11 months. And it all comes back to the fact that there's no face, there's no person, there's no body that anybody feels they're actually talking with. And time again, I hear from constituents who live in my area that they get a letter, they don't understand the content of the letter. Did it really reply or provide an outcome, or did I have an opportunity to ask a question? And then when I've tried to contact and find out more information, I'm told my request has been resolved. So I'm really passionate because I do feel as a rural council, when it comes to customer service, and we all know, you're out there, you're pounding the pavement all the time. We all know how much can be resolved through a simple conversation. And so it's my view, whilst it's great to have a system and process, and I absolutely acknowledge the work of our customer service team, there's a missing piece to the puzzle, and the missing piece is the conversation. And I know firsthand how quickly a complaint can be rectified if you respond with a prompt phone call. So I'm very passionate about a phone call, about creating that relationship with council, and about delivering a service to the people of our community. And I will not be supporting any customer service charter that does not address these concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Look, I've got to be completely honest here. I must say that if there was, over the last 12 months since becoming involved in communicating with the public through the election campaign, I'd certainly reiterate what you're saying. This was no doubt far and away for me the biggest issue that I heard from the community was that I don't think it's a reflection on the recent management of council. I think this is something the community have felt for a long time, that post-amalgamation, there's a wall up in council and you don't know how to get through that wall. You don't know who to talk to, you don't know who to make contact with. There's no personal attention, there's no personal treatment for the customer. And people were saying to me, look, I've got to be careful not to use the word Centrelink here, but they're actually not too bad these days. But it's like dealing with a big federal organisation. We just don't know how to get through and make contact. Now, there will be cases where people have really, really good stories, but I don't think this is also helping making our staff life any easier either, because then they often get to the point where they've got to deal with an angry customer. So it's a really good point you make, and it is absolutely the strong view of many people in the community that post-amalgamation, we've lost that personal contact with our people out in our towns and our rural communities, and we do need to address it. This charter, under the work that CEO Mark's been doing with General Manager Jarvis and pulling this together, is very much aimed at addressing that issue once and for all after many, many years of community discontentment. And I thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for speaking so passionately on behalf of our community in your role representing them. Well said, thank you. Okay, Councillor Duff.
conversation fast-tracked. And I 100% agree that a phone call would make a massive difference.
Can I also just acknowledge here, this is a joint responsibility. So, this is an issue that is absolutely boiling out there in the community and has been for some time. It's not a reflection necessarily on this council, the previous council, the current staff at administration, the CEO or his staff. This feeling I suspect has been there for a long time. This goes back to 2008 and beyond. And if we're going to deal with, it seems to me it needs will from the council and our operational team to work together to address this issue. So this just isn't about saying, oh, the staff aren't doing their job. And I'm sure that's not what you're saying, Councillor Shoemaker. There has to be a concerted effort by us as councillors to make sure that we are making this a priority for our organisation, that we are providing the resource, the training, the policy framework, the expectations to support our CEO and our senior executive team in implementing this across the organisation. It has to be a full commitment from us as a council to support the organisation in making that happen, because my view is that the vast majority that people who work in this place absolutely want to walk down the street and hold their head high and feel proud to have that council badge on their chest, as your dad did, as my dad did. And I know so many people out there in this organisation that are in this job, not necessarily for a career or for the money, but because they love their community. And that's why they wear the council badge, and that's why they don't go and work in Centrelink or go and work in the private sector. They work in this organisation because, I can see people in this room, I think, tick that box. You're in this job because you want to do it for your community. But are we giving them the opportunity, the resources, the tools? Are we giving them support as a council to enable that to happen? And I said when I was elected, someone said to me, what would you like to achieve in your term? And I said, if I could achieve one thing, I'd be happy. And that was to put every single one of our 350 hot bodies, as Mark calls them, in a position where they're all walking down the street, pushing the mower, driving the grader, walking across to get their lunch, feeling proud to wear the South Burnett Regional Council badge, as my dad did for 51 years. And if I can see our staff walking with that pride as they walk around the region, then I'll know that we as a council have achieved something special. And that is just a big rock that we need to work on and commit to, my fellow councillors, in supporting our CEO and the organisation in making this happen. It is not going to happen overnight, but it starts with us in putting the policy framework in place, as you're saying, Councillor Shoemaker, but then also making sure that we are staffing, resourcing and training our people and encouraging our people. It worries me that our people feel frightened sometimes to do a little bit extra, to make the phone call. And I don't think that's something that's come along under the leadership of our current CEO. But if I can speak openly, somehow that culture's developed since 2008 across the organisation. It may be in response to the pendulum swinging a long way around legislation and regulation of workplace health and safety and everything else. But we have got so many people in this organisation that want to help the customer, but feel afraid of doing so for ramifications. And I don't think that's something that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. I think that goes back a lot further. It's a lot deeper, and we need to deal with that cultural problem. And Mr. CEO and I have had this conversation, and we are both on the same page with this, that we have got to deal with that cultural issue, because we have staff that desperately want to do more for the community. We've got to allow them to do so and free them up to do so without putting them or our council at risk. But we've got to work at making that happen, and this is a really good place to start. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. So anyway, that's my speech about how I feel about it. Mr. CEO, would you like to just respond?
Get it to work? Yep, excellent. Yeah, no, thankfully. The two things, and again, the discussion's brilliant, because the two things are, well, one of the first things I've said since day dot, council just needs to clearly articulate its service standards and then make a decision on that, and then we can gear up for it. So that's fine. Councillor, your example, there will be a lot of those out there. There are. Generally, when they get messy like that, they're the ones I end up with, because they get escalated up to the point. So Councillor Duff's very adept at sending them up. So I've seen quite a few over a period of time. Can I? One of the things is, and it's a really good conversation as far as setting the standard, and it's been talked about the servicing of this and the phone call. Anything can be done. And interesting, as we've got, and without sounding like I'm repeating myself, as we've got better, particularly this year, I acknowledge your comments about IT, Mr. Mayor, this morning. They are really kicking into gear and kicking some goals now because they're getting the support to do what we need to do. For the first time since I've been here, I'm able to produce HR metrics every quarter. So the 350 hot bodies that would have been about back in the day, as of, as at July, 1st of July this year, we had, excluding councillors, but includes casuals and trainees, we had 325 hot bodies in July. We now have 317. We're down to, this includes, well, it doesn't include the casuals, but the FTE, we're down to 295 FTE. So we've actually been running operational budgets. It's one of the areas, I mean, that you utilise to fit parameters. You look for those efficiencies. So the organisation's actually been, over the last 3 years in particular, declining for, I'm trying to think of a better word, but been rationalising its staff numbers, and it's continuing to shrink. So, and that's been partly brought about by budget pressures over an extended period of time. So, so we're running with, we've got anywhere, we've had a couple of trainees finish up. So as we go over that cycle now, we've probably got anything up to 12 trainees and apprentices in that 295. So people, and it's one of the things that, like, when I say I get cross and the barbecue chats about, oh, council, what do those guys do? You're fat and lazy and you've got a whole heap of staff. The organisation's actually been responding and becoming much more efficient in its delivery. So you've got a lot less people doing at least exactly the same volume of work. So this policy, whichever form it finally takes when it goes to January, is going to be excellent because it's going to articulate those service levels and we'll tool up to deliver. So, yeah, no, thank you. It's been a really good conversation. Very good points raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. General Manager Jarvis, you've been sitting there with your light coming on and off for a little while, and you've worked in local government for a long time as well as CEO Mark. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking here? I'd like you to share that if you feel comfortable to do so.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. That was a great conversation you had just a while ago, councillors, especially you, Councillor Shoemaker, because I started my career in local government in customer contact, having served for 15 years in customer contact prior to that. So I am passionate about it, and also the reputation of council, and I totally agree with you there, councillor, that example you gave by that human contact, by engaging with the community, it just puts us out there reputation-wise, and that's what people are hungry for. And I hear the feedback even from our customer contact girls. I was walking our dog the other day and a lady come across to pat the dog or whatever, and she said to me, oh, where do you work? And I said, oh, I work at the local council. She said, oh, my God, I love that Mary. She's wonderful every time I ring. And she had so much to say about Mary as our customer contact. And yeah, a lot of people, they do deliver quality services, but I do hear what you're saying. I believe yes, there are gaps, but I think that the culture of the organisation through the change in management is changing, and you do have the support of the management that will filter this down. Everyone's keen to move forward and to increase our services to the community. And I think this is a good start through the service levels. And if I'll hold the Mayor to that resources there, if he's going to support that, I'd just like to say on behalf of the management, Mr. Mayor, that we accept the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO and General Managers. And as I said, special thanks to you, Councillor Shoemaker, for taking this conversation down the path that it's going. This is probably the best conversation I've had in this chamber since being elected. And yes, realignment of resources into customer service inside the departments in support of our customer contact team, who do have a very, very good reputation. I've had similar stories. People ring me and say, oh, gee, those young fellows and young women, or on that answer that phone call, they are absolutely tremendous. They are so lovely to deal with. I wish every organisation was as nice to deal with as yours, but I do feel when we get in behind that inside the departments, yes, we have work to do, and we have to take that as a joint responsibility between us as a council, as I said, and the organisation to work on that. We've got to do it together. It may require some realignment of resources and putting a greater emphasis on customer service. Yes, technical delivery of services is important, but you've still got to have the relationship with your customer. And when I was a young accountant, I was very fortunate to have a tremendous role model, a senior chartered accountant. He took me under his wing, and he said, young Otto, he said, I can see you're technically very good. He said, but if you're technically sound, you'll be a good accountant. He said, but what makes a great accountant is the relationship you have with your customer, the relationship you have with your client. And I've never forgotten that. So you might not be the best technically as a professional or as a technician, but if you can build a wonderful rapport with your client, your customer, then that's a much more important thing to have going for you. And I learnt that from him. I've never forgotten it. It's always stood me in good stead in terms of my personal name and reputation and that of my business. And I think as a council, I'd love to see us in 2024 in a position where we can hold ourselves up proudly, us and the staff can all stand up feeling as though we are at the top of the tree in terms of the standards that we set for the delivery of service to our community. We've talked a lot about being a model council when it comes to compliance with Belcara and supporting Belcara reforms as an important part of open, transparent and effective governance. But alongside that, just as importantly, wouldn't it be great to hold ourselves up as a model council in terms of the service that we give the 33,000 people that deserve to have that service, to have the 33,000 people in the South Burnett get that absolute top-end, top-shelf service from their council. Just because we're out here in the bush in the South Burnett doesn't mean we can't deliver that. I believe we've got the organisation and the people to do it, but we've got to put the wind under their sails to make that happen. So thank you. Councillor Potter, I'd love to hear from you. Councillor Shoemaker, yep, go in order as you feel comfortable.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do just have some questions. So I'm mindful this is coming to the January meeting. So there are a few things that I would like to maybe have some further informational discussion about. Maybe not at this point, but for the team to take away and think about. So on the second page of the policy, the third point down, it says that customer interactions and all reasonable service requests will be appropriately recorded in Council's business system, including but not limited to ECM and PNR, for informative decision making and to allow Council to monitor the quality of the service provision. Now, I think that's really important, as CEO Mark has pointed out, that our systems are growing and that there is more capacity in those systems. So I would like to better understand how we as councillors can expect that to occur, how that monitoring of the quality of the service provision will occur and how it will be reported back to council.
Mr. CEO, are you happy to take that on notice at this stage?
Yep.
I think that's
These
an on
are all
notice.
for
It's a
on
really
notice.
good question.
So the second one I've got, the next point down, Council is committed to protecting customer privacy. Council will provide our customers with opportunities to comment and make suggestions on our services and standards to assist Council to enhance the quality of service we provide. Same again, I would like to understand how we expect to see this reported and rolled out. And in my experience, I think there can be an enormous amount learned from actually contacting. I would like to actually go through the process where we pick some customers and we cold call and actually ask some questions about the service they've provided, and for that feedback to be returned to council, because I think those learnings can be really informative and really critical to the process going forward. It doesn't have to be that's just a quick snapshot of how we've been tracking. So that's an idea of mine, but certainly I understand it's operational, and I'd certainly appreciate some feedback from council in terms of how we can see that real hunger for improving our services embedded. And you see, big banks do that with quick surveys after the phone call, or, something in that regard. So I'd like to turn our minds to that. And the other one, which I'm very passionate about, is continuous improvement. And so the point that says council's process and decision-making will focus on objectivity, consistency, reliability, transparency, and accountability, all beautiful words, with complaints taken seriously and used to improve service delivery. So I would like to better understand how those learnings will be embedded in our services going forward, particularly when we're talking about our role as a council to resource this council effectively so that it can deliver on the service provisions and the expectations that we as residents and ratepayers of the region have. I'm really passionate about understanding how we are going to actually consistently embed those learnings through the organisation, because in my experience I have learned that you can save enormous amounts of money when you do actually make a commitment to that and have a proper process in place. And then there's just the statement about implementing processes and practices to ensure the services are fully inclusive and accessible to all members of the community. I completely agree with the intent of that statement, but I think we need to be a little bit clearer in what that actually means, in terms of, is that enabling disability access to all of our customers, all of council buildings, or is that, if somebody, I'd just like a bit more information about what that actually means. But they're my questions taken on notice, and I look forward to more discussions about this. I'm very passionate about this area of council, being that I actually started in 2006 as a junior customer service officer. So I know exactly what it's like to have a phone call with an irate customer and phoning the department who won't take the phone call. Or I've been in that situation. I know what that's like, and we absolutely, hearing your remarks, Mayor Otto, it's absolutely critical that we resource our council with what they need to deliver the best services we can and that we can afford to the people of our region. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. And of course, the issues you raised there, if I can look at the first one, so part of this process and part of this policy framework is also to underpin the development of reporting regimes that will enable us as a council to work with our senior executive team in monitoring the delivery of this policy. So, for example, at the moment, to give you a little bit of feedback in relation to the ECM and PNR, the CEO and I are currently trialling a process with my own customer requests that I'm submitting. So I'm the guinea pig customer. I'm putting them through, and we're trialling a process whereby that's reported to me on a monthly basis, so I get a full status report. So we're actually using that as a trial in redesigning and developing our systems to provide that level of reporting back. And then that will then hopefully over time, well, we are working towards over time having that, once we've fine-tuned that, shared with council and implemented throughout the entire organisation. So we're well and truly on board with taking us down this path in terms of a reporting regime. And we've now in a position where we've got, we'll see soon, we've got monthly reports coming through. The other thing, of course, in terms of opportunities, comment, make suggestions, I think that's a really good point. And we have heard a lot of this from the community. And yes, organisations are doing this. It's important, though, that one is able to appropriately respond to that feedback in those surveys. And people have talked about, can we have a drop box outside the council office? Could we have a suggestion box inside your website where we can actually make a suggestion or give some feedback, and then that goes through a department to analyse that periodically. So there are these opportunities to do that, and I'm really pleased you raised that, because as an organisation we need to put those mechanical processes in place pursuant to this policy. The other thing, of course, there, and when we talk about, you talked about taking complaints seriously, using them to improve our service value quality, that is really about a cultural change where we do see complaints as being a constructive, positive opportunity for us to look at how we can be better. It's a bit like saying competition's good, because when you've got competition, you'll sharpen your tools. And it's important here to get feedback from customers and do that. The other thing, of course, is in terms of inclusivity, is that, in organisations having to sort of redesign their business processes so that we can accommodate people who have disabilities, albeit they might have a speech impediment, they might have hearing issues, they might be new Australians who need some language interpretation and so forth and support. And there will be opportunities for us moving forward. And I think that's what this policy is really about, to setting that framework, setting that direction, and we can then move forward and put those processes in place. So well said, and I think we're all getting a clear message here that we need to do a lot more work. This policy isn't just a set and forget. This policy is about setting the foundation and then using this as a platform to continuous improvement, as you suggested, continually improve. But excellent comments. Councillor Potter, your thoughts as well?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm actually loving this conversation. I love that Councillor Shoemaker actually brought up this particular request because I do believe that we need the right staff in the right departments to make those initial phone calls because, I mean, as we all know, there's right staff for the right jobs. So, and in servicing those jobs, I do believe it's highly important. And I also believe that the personal contact with customers is highly important too. And we do need that because they do feel lost. But with regards to your ability ones, and I think it's fantastic that we've actually written that into our policy to be, they haven't written all abilities, but I think to be inclusive for all abilities is highly important for us as a community organisation, for the whole community.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Potter. And of course, I gave a couple of examples there, but we do have a large percentage of our residents who are elderly people, and elderly people don't always find the internet something that's easy to navigate, or even something that they're confident to use. So, you know, sometimes what worked well in the past also can work well in the future. And we need to make sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of you picking up the telephone, having those personal conversations. Yes. Okay.
Mr Mayor, given the time, could I, rather than the recommendations as there, could we just suggest that this policy, the redraft of the policy, and then be circulated for further comment, and then we can come back in the new year?
Yeah, Mr. CEO, I'm actually, thank you for that offer, and I appreciate it. However, I am keen to see that we get this through as a recommendation from today if we can. And in that light, I'm wondering whether we can, I think if we do this, what we've got to acknowledge though is if we get this through and it's resolved as policy in January, that it's a work in progress. So this is the platform. It's not an opportunity, it's not something where we can say it's going to happen like that. So it's not then coming back to our staff in 3 months' time and saying, oh, you know, no one picked up the phone and rang that customer within 2 days. This is the end goal. This is where we want to get ourselves to, is to full and complete implementation of this. It's going to take time for our organisation to adjust around resourcing, training, realigning people, getting the right people in the right roles. We've got to give the organisation time to skill up and gear up to deliver on this. But having said that, I'm wondering if we can set that platform today, we can get it through to the January. I'm still feeling comfortable with saying, for example, the 2 days on the phone call from the department and the 10 days on the written correspondence as a starting point for the first policy to go to January, if that's possible.
Yep. No, my apologies if that came out wrong. There's besides the 2 and the 10 that are referred to in the, or the 5 as referred to in the recommendation, there's a couple of other changes that have been brought up and agreed, so it'll need to be redrafted, recirculated, certainly in the resolution or the recommendation that it goes to the January. Not moving away from that. We would all like that clarity to get it to the January, but there will be a couple of more changes in the draft than just your 2 and 5 or 10. Yep. So
I'll put that to council. Councillors, do you want to lock this down today and get something as a recommendation to the January, or do you want to go put it back, have a little bit more work done, have it recirculated in response to the conversation today? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are just to make some of the changes, or to, as CEO Mark's saying, to actually embed some of the information that, some of the discussion we've had today, recirculate it and definitely still have it at the January meeting. So maybe the recommendation is that, the service charter be amended as per the discussion at the committee meeting, and circulated for comment or feedback and tabled at the January council meeting.
Thanks very much. I can see Linnell typing that motion now. Other councillors, did you want to, how's the chamber feeling as a process? Okay. Councillor Henshin?
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
happy with
I'll
that,
just
and
get
I
some more
think,
commentary. Yep.
Yeah, reiterate what Councillor Shoemaker said. We've all heard this, and probably why we're sitting in the chairs we're sitting in with emails and things that haven't happened in time and previously. And like you said, Mayor Otto, this has probably stemmed back from a long, long time. And this is pretty important, and I think departments and managers need to work with this and get their heads around it, but I think the timeframes and the changes that's been made here is something we look forward to working with. Remembering that, we've been put in positions that, with communication and consultation, we tiptoe around on eggshells because of the rules and regulations that have been imposed upon us, and we're all still getting our heads around that as well. So I look forward to this, and certainly be feedback tabled in January. So, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Henshin. As the General Manager Jarvis.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. We're more than happy, once these changes have been made, to workshop this prior to the January meeting as well, if that's the appetite of the council. We're only too happy to workshop that with you.
Yeah, could I suggest that as the portfolio holder, this is my space, social and corporate governance, and that I'm quite prepared as the portfolio holder to work with our CEO, our general managers, our senior executive team, and Manager Carolyn to come up with a new document or an amended document, that can be circulated to councillors. Councillors, please provide me with your feedback, and I will then take that through to. Just in terms of managing timeframes around Christmas, GM, so thanks for the offer, but I'd prefer to see that as a process. We probably haven't got much time to get many more workshops in, so a councillor's happy, provide me with your feedback. I'll work with the senior executive team to get that to the January meeting and to bring on board all of the conversation that's been had today. Thank you. So we've got a recommendation here that the South Bennett Regional Council Customer Service Charter Strategic 008 be amended as per the discussion and recirculated for comment and feedback and tabled at the January 21 general meeting. Councillor Shoemaker, are you happy to move that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I would like to move that.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Duff. Everyone's, all those in favour? Okay, we'll take that recommendation as being passed at this standing committee meeting. Thank you all, and thank you all for what's been a really pleasant conversation, a really important conversation. Okay, moving on now to, sorry? Can we run straight through? Is anyone desperate for a toilet break? Okay, how about we adjourn? So I'll now move that we adjourn for a 10-minute break and we return at 11:20 a.m. Councillor Potter's seconded. Everyone comfortable with that? Good, thank you all. See you back here at 11:20 a.m. Okay, welcome back everybody. I'll now move to reopen the meeting at 11:22 a.m. Do we have a seconder? Thanks very much, Councillor Froloff. Okay, councillors, we're up to item 6.3 on the agenda. Mr CEO, could you provide some commentary on that? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As everyone would have noted when they read their agenda, there was a technical hitch in the system, so the report has a fatal flaw, to be one of a politer way of putting it. So it just needs to be left on the table, please, till the new year.
Thanks very much, Mr CEO. I'll now move that item 6.3, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Recruitment and Selection Policy, Statutory 014, lay on the table for the until the standing committee meeting, to this standing committee meeting in February 2021. We have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Those in favour, passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.4 at 35 is adoption of Council's computer, internet and email usage policy, strategic 007. Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Probably happy to take questions. The policy is attached. It's gone through the hoops. She's not a very long policy. The IT and staff, it's been circulated previously, but yeah, very much happy to take questions on it as far as all clarifications.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. I'll move that the South Bennett Regional Council Computer, Internet and Email Usage Policy, Strategic 007, be adopted as presented. Obviously, that will then go off to the December general meeting. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Henson. Okay, all in favour? Thank you. Passed unanimously that the policy be recommended to the December general meeting of council. Item 6.5 is adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Arts, Culture and Heritage Policy, Strategic 009 at 40. And I would just like, before we go to the floor for a mover on this, to call on Councillor Potter to speak to it. Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As some of you will know, this has been a passion of mine since I got under council, trying to get this policy up and actually in this room. So it's really great to see. And I would just like to ask, probably through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, whether with this policy, whether it's going to be emailed out to all the different community groups, so South Bennett Arts, South Bennett Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Corporation and all the other groups around, art galleries and everything. Is that the way this works, or do we have to take that out to them ourselves?
Good question. Over that level of detail, I'm not totally on who we're talking to.
So, Councillor, could I just suggest that should council recommend this to the next general meeting of council, that in the interim period that we do embark on a consultation process, and wondering whether you could work to lead that process with the community, considering your involvement in South Bennett Arts and other groups in the community. How would you feel about that?
More than happy to, Mr. Mayor. Would love it and enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. Mr. CEO, well, just in terms of time frame for bringing this to council, would that be would the January meeting give us time then to undertake that consultation process, Councillor, CEO?
It would, depending on feedback. You've got the Christmas break in the middle, so whether it's January or the February standing committee it would come back to. There's pretty much an opinion, I suppose, there's universal desire for this policy, so I don't know that we'll have too much trouble getting people to engage, which will be great. But yeah, whether we have enough time to bring it back to January or brings back to the February standing committee and then February general.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Councillor Potter, what are your thoughts? January general meeting, give you time to consult?
I think January would be fine, because I think it's very similar to the old policy, and I've already spoken to a member of SB Arts today with regards to this, and I think it would be very fast and easy to do.
I very much appreciate the support of the media in the room to get this information out to the community, that this policy is now, should it be recommended today? Let's get this out to the community if we can. I'd really appreciate the media. And our media and comms team, Mr. CEO, if we could also have them get some media information out about this to make sure that the community know that this policy is out there. Councillor Potter is leading the consultation process in working with the arts community, and that it will be coming to the council meeting in January of next year. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Potter, would you like to read and move the officer's recommendation? Oh, sorry, Councillor Shuey wanted to say something. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say, yeah, I'm fully supportive of this policy and its approach, because I have been talking for quite some time about arts tourism. So I'm really keen to work with Councillor Potter during the consultation piece. I think the consultation piece is what's really important for this next month, because I think there are a lot of really great words in here. There are a lot of great verbs and things that indicate that council's keen to take some kind of action, but I do think there needs to be, I'm keen for that third-party feedback around a bit more of the meat. I think we've got bones here, good bones for policy, but I think we need more meat.
And I do actually think that the feedback from the arts community is imperative in this policy going forward, because I think there needs to be, from a council point of view, I have been sitting with this for a while. I think I want to understand more around how council will be able to really embed this policy in the way in which we go about our business. So I think there's still a fair bit of work to be done in this space, and I really look forward to those conversations, because I'm really keen to engage and understand more about. I know the Arts Development Officer is a great approach, but I think there's some exceptional learnings through the South Burnett Arts Hours this year, and I really just want to bring all that feedback together and make sure this is really going to see us achieve what we're setting out to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Thanks for making those comments, because really brings forward a good question. And so you'll see in the policy here, in terms of the link to the corporate and operational plan, it talks about, under the annual operational plan 2020-21, developing and implementing the council policy framework to support strategic planning and compliance with legislation, policies, code of practice and standards. So just to emphasise there, this is to support council strategic planning, and most importantly, the next element of that is the South Burnett Arts Development Strategy. So this will certainly provide us with that policy foundation upon which we can then move forward with fleshing out, providing the meat around the bones, as you call it, which will be, the meat will be in that arts development strategy. So the policy provides the broad framework. The strategy then provides the detail as to how we're going to achieve the outcomes that we're looking to see in the arts, culture and heritage space across the region. There will be consideration given to, when we start to look at our structure post-corporate plan finalisation, our governance structure as well, so that we can have give consideration to, turn our minds to advisory committees. And should we, for example, do we need to have an Arts, Cultural and Heritage Advisory Committee as part of the process for developing the strategic plan and making sure that the strategic plan moving forward, month in, month out, year in, year out, remains relevant to the needs and opportunities of our region. So great question. Certainly the framework is here in the policy, and we'll be able to then use this to underpin and move forward with the strategic policy, the development strategies, the development strategy. Yeah, so absolutely. Right, so thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Potter, we might go to you now. Are you prepared to move this one?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'd love to. I would like to move that the committee recommends to Council that the draft South Burnett Regional Council Arts, Culture and Heritage Policy Strategic 009 be adopted for external consultation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter, and can I have the pleasure of seconding that? Because I know I've been very, very pleased to be able to support you in getting us to this point. Councillors, any further debate before we move to vote? Those in favour? Thank you all. Passed unanimously. The policy will now be recommended to the January meeting of Council. And congratulations, Councillor Potter and the arts community, for getting us to this point. January will be a momentous day where we can have that policy resolved by Council. All going well, should it be resolved. Thank you. Okay, 6.6 at 45 is the matter to do with customer and councillor requests. And we've been provided with a summary document here. And the recommendation is that simply at this stage that the customer and councillor request summary be received for information. A little bit of background. This is the body of work that's been undertaken by our CEO with staff in response to the conversation we had previously around a reporting regime in relation to customer service standards. So this is now starting to feed through into our reporting regime that will come to standing committee in terms of tracking the customer requests that have come through the system. I think it's appropriate now that we turn to Mr. CEO to give us a little bit of explanation around this report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's probably General Manager Jarvis and Manager Carolyn and the crew, because those guys have been putting a lot of this together to acknowledge the work that's done. This is the first, so there's a lot of background work being done. Data cleansing was raised earlier on in the day. As far as tidying up some of these systems, the old adage, rubbish data in, rubbish data out, and you end up with numbers that aren't quite right. Also, we have some of the technicalities in the system as far as how it reports. And I'll give you just one really, you would think, how hard is it to keep track of a customer request? So within the water section, the monthly water report data that's presented as part of Councillor Froloff's report, that data is actually collected under the SWIM system. Now, it's the same data source, but its parameters are different. So you'll see variations between the customer request data and the monthly water reporting. The same data, different assumptions, different parameters, and the numbers are slightly different. And you think, oh, look, if someone wants to go to the effort of putting it, oh, look, they've got it wrong. They've got wrong number there, wrong number there. Both numbers can be simultaneously right, but there's slightly different reporting parameters around them. So, and also there is historic ones in there. So this will be a stock standard monthly report. As the Mayor said before, we've been playing with a couple of councillor requests. Mentioned it in conversation with councillors last month about the amount of outstanding customer requests for councillors, the ones that have been actioned and ones aren't. The guys are writing up a bit of a basic report, so it reports monthly on what's still outstanding. The one I did for the Mayor yesterday as part of the dummy run, if I can call myself the dummy, it had all requests. There was about 88, Mr. Mayor, I think. Since 1st of July, it had all requests completed, outstanding. It's starting to get timeframes against it. So that level of refinement is coming into that reporting, which is good. The good old fashioned, I like to be basic, red, yellow and green. Red, problem, yellow and green, it's done. So very visual that you can just flick through the thing and have a look and say, okay, green, don't worry about those. Red, yellows, yep, okay. So that's coming. It is as part of the whole system, getting everything to talk to each other, going onto the SAS. There's a range of, I won't go on too long, but there are a range of different factors coming together. The request for information for our councillors, that's a register that's kept in ECM. I don't know if you want, and it's a question, if you want to see the same information every month or request for information, councillors get them when they're done. That could be a quarterly component rather than a monthly, because you'll be just seeing the same information every month, depending on what's changed. Anyway, yeah, so any feedback, either meeting or post-meeting, more than welcome, because there's no point doing this if it's not hitting the targets, and we want the information to have some degree of relevance and use. So, and also will make the annual reporting much easier by the time you get to the end of the year. And same point that I was making about the HR metrics now. Every year at the end of the year, 30 June, there was quite the fuss to work out the HR metrics, and it was a very manual process. PNC's got that ticking along now, and we've got a quarterly update on the metrics. So by the time we get to the end of the financial year, the numbers already done.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. And I think as CEO's articulated there, this is the start of a process, and we're really keen to get feedback from councillors as to what your thoughts are around this. Really important that we keep evolving it, refining it, fine-tuning it to make sure it's meeting your needs in terms of reporting on customer requests, Councillor Duff, and also reporting on requests for information, and getting the level of detail that you're comfortable with on this, with a view to by perhaps 30 June next year, 6 months in, we'll have a very good reporting regime around all of this stuff. So, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a bit of feedback. I just have noticed that with the requests for information, some of them are quite detailed, and you know, obviously the general manager's gone to a fair bit of trouble, and I just noticed that some of them have just been like a biro-written response, which I think as we move forward probably we need to tidy that up a bit, because sometimes I have trouble reading some of the writing, and I just think that if the council has gone to the trouble of typing up the request, that perhaps the response could be typed up as well. That's just
Thanks,
a-
Councillor Duff.
just
If
a
I
bit of
can just
feedback.
perhaps, so I think we've probably, we've put the new system in and we've thrown a few RFIs into the system fairly quickly, and the general managers have been keen to try and get back and respond to that. But I'm sure once the dust settles and the system's working much more, smoothly, we get into a rhythm, we'll see those nice clear type reports come back. But good feedback, yeah, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find this report imperative when it comes to proactive issues management. I certainly think it's a great start. I hope with the information, when it comes to feedback about the information that we'd like to see, I'm hoping from some of the requests, like I note here, just from today's report, 13,831 requests from the community have been received over the last 11 months. And we can see that, a large proportion of those have been in the request for rates and valuations. And I love that that's broken down into what kinds of things. Almost 1,000 people have just contacted us to change their address, which is good feedback, particularly when it comes to talking about budgeting and resourcing and what that looks like. I hope that this information, probably my encouragement is around identifying the trends. When we look at the animal information here, we can see that we've had 1,600 requests in relation to the management of animals in our region. And, when we start to break that down, 497 of those are nuisance complaints. So for me, I look at that and I think, well, when it comes to supporting our compliance team, I want to know more information around, do they actually have the resources they need to manage this number of complaints? I think I really can't support this enough. I can't thank the team enough. It also shows that 1,394 of those 13,000 requests remain open. So that's almost 10%, basically 10% of the requests that we've received remain open. So I think it acknowledges just how much work has gone into the enormous amount of inquiries that council receives. And I think 10%, I look at that and I think, well, that's probably around industry standard, and they're the sorts of things I'll be looking at into the future around how we benchmark some of these things as an organisation. When we talk about, I know I've mentioned I'm very passionate about streamlining, finding efficiencies, continuous improvement, that hunger for these things. So this data is just the beginning of that process, and I can't acknowledge the team enough in terms of starting with something. It's very much a work in progress, but I think this actually empowers our council and us as representatives of the people of this region to actually make some decisions around what's actually happening on the ground. So I'm fully supportive and I look forward to much more of this to come.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker, and some excellent observations there. It is very much that sort of process where we'll continue to refine this. And of course, as you've highlighted there, it's an opportunity for us also to get to the point where we've got enough veracity around this data, enough integrity around it, that we can actually take this to the community and help share the story about the volume of work that does come through our organisation. So if we're processing 15,000 customer requests per year, which is what we're tracking for here on this data, it's important we do share that with the community so they understand just how much work goes through our council offices. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, now, General Manager Jarvis, did you want to add comment to that?
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
supporting what you said, Mr. Mayor, is that this is just the start, and as the CEO alluded to, that we've done a data cleanse now, and sort of the integrity of the numbers, I think, are a little bit. I think they're more secure now. So we'll be trending, analysing the data. It's no good just collecting data for the sake of it. It needs to be analysed and look for benchmarks. We'll benchmark it, then we'll see what the trends are. So, yeah, exactly what you were saying, Councillor. We're on track with that.
Yeah, and a good observation that the data underpins the pursuit of continuous improvement and excellence in service delivery. Yeah. Councillor Shoemaker, back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, and just in relation to that, I certainly acknowledge the comments, and I think it empowers our council in the next 12 months when we're looking at, I hope that we can actually set some audacious targets around maybe bringing that number of customer requests down, maybe responding to some of these issues that come up a little bit more efficiently. So I do think, you know, the next 12 months are really critical. I think we as councillors all need to really tune into this information. And then when it comes to setting our operational plan and our budget for the next year, we can really do that in an informed way. And I would like to see us put some numbers and metrics around some of this stuff, some key performance indicators that we can actually go back to the community with our report card and say, well, we were tracking really well here. You know what? It's not about being fantastic at everything. It's about acknowledging where we could improve and what we're doing about that. So I think this is a great start, and I look forward to being in a position as a councillor this time next year with this information to make some really informed decisions when we go into that budgeting process.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. It is valuable information. I'm sure General Manager Meehan's sitting there with his mind ticking over, just thinking how, as he rolls out his ongoing program of his asset management planning, with putting in place those forward plans across the organisation with the other GMs and the senior executive team, how we'll then start to see the results reported here for that more proactive forward planning work. General Manager, your thoughts?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with the councillor. I think it's a good step in the organisation, a bit like your customer service strategy this morning, and just probably to reiterate what the CEO was saying this morning. Once you look at service levels and resourcing, you can start to get everything to turn together, and I think you've got a really good opportunity. So, yeah, no, we look forward to it. It should be good.
Well, it's my pleasure, and if I can, on behalf of the CEO, if I can move that that the customer and council request summary be received for information. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you all, and again, thank you to our CEO and the staff. We're on the right track here, and we're only going to see that improve over time, but a great start. Thank you very much. Right, now I'm very excited to get to item 7.1, and I say that in all sincerity, because it's a really important area for council. So item 7.1 at page 52, it's my pleasure to ask Councillor Shoemaker to present your economic development portfolio report. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure that I present my report. As a council, it's our job to work at every level, both inside and outside our region, understanding, learning and setting our shared strategic direction with a constant eye on the horizon. It's pleasing for this council to bring in the new year with the draft corporate plan for community consultation and adoption that will inform further work on our economic development strategy into 2021. Over this past 9 months, we've all been at the table, listening to our local businesses, farmers and operators, learning more about their operations and how we as a council could work with them to achieve better outcomes in our region. I believe this time has helped us to set our strategic tone, a core focus on population growth and improved aspects of livability that will encourage people to call the South Burnett home. I'm excited by the many projects we have underway that will help us to deliver on these desired outcomes. I look forward to the year ahead and building on some of the early discussions that I've had with the Mayor and some of you around how we may progress Council's approach and framework for economic development into the new year. I'm also keen for Council to consider renaming my portfolio title to Regional Development, largely because the way I see it is similar to the many other regions who recognise economic benefits are only one of the key drivers when it comes to the growth and prosperity of our region. I look forward to more discussions with you about this into the new year. It's my view we have a great opportunity to leverage the knowledge and expertise of existing groups and bodies who are focused on building the resilience of our region and building the confidence in our diverse economy. These groups and community organisations share a passion for sustaining what we have and improving and growing what we can. I would like to have Baido, Red Earth Community Foundation, Visit South Burnett, the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce, the Mergen Business and Development Association, NATDA,
and other town and village-based business groups at the table, sharing their knowledge and expertise, and being represented by key leaders and movers and shakers in our community. In the conversations that we have as a council, I see these stakeholder groups engage passionate individuals and businesses who are every day opening their doors, paying wages, navigating supply chains. And it's my view these groups already provide a strong voice in local matters, a first-hand understanding of the issues and barriers our region faces to growth and regional development, and have a shared interest due to their significant investment in the South Burnett region. As discussed in last week's Infrastructure Committee meeting, there are plenty of funding opportunities available to our region. However, it seems our top drawer of projects for funding needs attention. It's my view we need a drawer full of well thought out concepts and designs. This drawer full of ideas that are shovel ready and means that we have the confidence when funding becomes available that we are ready, and what we as a council becomes available, that we are ready and what we as a council are going after has the full backing and support of the business leaders and entrepreneurs of our region. I'm talking about a project pipeline, and I would like to work with my fellow councillors to establish a regional development advisory group who channel the views, feedback and ideas of the established groups and networks I've mentioned. Council's Regional Development Advisory Group would do the homework and would bring the ideas and concepts to this council chamber for thrashing out in committee meetings and making a recommendation for consideration by council at the general meetings. I envisage the Regional Development Advisory Group would work with our general managers and other bodies, including the Department of State Development, Tourism and Innovation, which name has just recently changed, and Regional Development Australia, to brainstorm the projects for the project pipeline, to draw on the learnings of other regions, and based on the information they bring from their networks and operations to this group, make recommendations via these committee meetings for council's consideration. In some cases, council may decide to allocate the funds needed to undertake the business case and groundwork to get the project proposed to shovel-ready status. Or the recommendation may be for council to endorse an application for funding to undertake specific projects or initiatives informed by council's Regional Development Advisory Group. The group who will bring everybody together in a cohesive and collaborative way. While these groups may have different agendas and purposes, it's my view they are all very passionate about the South Burnett, as am I, and I know you are too. This concept is still very much in its infancy, however, would support this council's approach and view of empowering local industries, businesses, entrepreneurs and individuals, and supporting them in what they need to be successful. It's my view that we are stronger when we work together, that we will continue to be impacted by droughts, floods and hailstorms, and that we have some incredible people in our region doing incredible things every day. As a small business owner and farmer myself, I know firsthand that in business, the need to keep your people employed, to run your operations, to streamline your activities, to continue to support your family and find savings and efficiencies is the culture of many businesses, agricultural enterprises, tradies and operators in our region. I see there could be much for this council to gain from listening to their ideas and learnings and using these in a way that informs our region's project pipeline. The pipeline that council will be the custodian and facilitator of on behalf of the people of our region. Put simply, we just don't know what we don't know, what we aren't living every day, and the concept of a regional development advisory group would inform the discussions and the advocacy of this council at the many tables in which it sits. I'm very keen to continue these discussions with my fellow councillors into the new year, particularly as we look to set the budget and the economic development, or as I'd like to say, regional development strategy for the years ahead. I'm confident from the discussions and workshops this council has had, our shared focus on improving the livability of our region will help to attract more families to live here. I'm confident that the South Burnett will be the next growth story. We just can't underestimate how important our project pipeline is in driving growth and maximising every funding opportunity. It's certainly been a big year for everyone and big in so many ways, but I see there is nothing but opportunity on our horizon. And these are just some of the clear indicators as to why. Council's newly adopted Development Incentives Program. The feedback from Council's newly adopted Development Incentives Program has been positive, with many local builders and developers looking to progress their projects because of this. Last financial year, Council received 64 planning applications, and as of last week, we were sitting at 24 for this year. I'm confident this boost will be the kickstart that our region needed, and it will mean more projects and essentially jobs as these developments get off the ground. Building applications on track. While first home buyer grants will end later this month, tradies are run off their feet with new builds underway, and if you drive around our region, you will note plenty of house pads ready to go. This year we have received 187 applications and 232 building certificates have been issued, and I'm confident we will see this exceed the 364 building applications received last year. Water security is our highest priority. We eagerly await the state government's response to enable the second phase of the feasibility studies to progress the planning and development of new or improved water infrastructure for the South Burnett as part of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund. Our visitor economy has grown. It's great to hear at Visit South Burnett's recent AGM that the tourism industry has a renewed focus as a collective working together in the spirit of strong collaboration and cohesion, which has brought almost 90 members to the table this year. The investment this council has made in Lake Bundoomba and Yallocool Park is delivering a return for our region. With visitors to Lake Bundoomba up in November by 153 visitors on the previous year, a total of 653 occupants from the 1st of November to the 18th of November, and for Yallocool Park an increase of 447 visitors from the previous year, being a total of 695 visitors during the November period. Major events are about to re-emerge in our region, with events including Bacon Fest planning for how they will adapt and flex to make the next festival a reality. The Kingaroy Visitor Information Centre, now I have to make some changes here, I'm sorry, I read the report wrong, has welcomed 1,459 visitors through their doors this month. Wondai, another 924, Nanango, 711 visitors, and Mergen, 509 visitors. I'd like to give an enormous thank you to the 296 volunteers who have made this happen and attributed more than, and I need to correct this, 30,000 hours to our centres this year. Cannot thank them enough, and it was such a privilege to meet some of them on the weekend at the thank you event. Our region is thinking big. The Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce recently held a strategic planning workshop to consider its role into the future and how it can advocate and support our business community to lead the changes and improvements that our business community need to be successful. The CEO, Mayor Otto, and I have met with Red Earth Community Foundation, the Bayido Board and Stanwell to discuss and share ideas and strategies as to how we can collectively build the resilience and capacity of our region into the future. Council has been engaging in conversations to lobby and advocate for QCN Fibre in the centre of Kingaroy's CBD, which would transform the jobs and opportunities for professionals to be based in the South Burnett. And the Blackbutt District Tourism and Heritage Association recently showed councillors on their tag-along tour the Bora Ring sites around Blackbutt and are keen to collaborate with South Burnett Regional Council and Cherbourg Aboriginal Council to share the stories of our region's Indigenous culture during 2021 being the year of Indigenous tourism. I know there are similar discussions that have been held at the Bunya Mountains, and I look forward to working with my fellow councillors to find ways to acknowledge these sites of cultural significance in a meaningful way, hand in hand with our traditional owners. So in closing, Mr Mayor, this is just a short snapshot, and I look forward to serving my community and continuing to work with our community to reshape Council's strategy and approach to achieving economic development, or as I'd like to say, regional development outcomes that maximise every opportunity and sets us up for the future. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that my report be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and I'll be pleased to second that. And I can only say in response to your report 2 words, hear, hear. Very well said, very comprehensive, and really hits the mark. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd actually like to congratulate Councillor Shoemaker on her economic development report. And I too would actually like to thank the volunteers, because we do have a lot of volunteers, and the ones that we met on Saturday were just amazing. But I'd like to also talk about the Black Butt tour we did as well, which was amazing. And I saw some things in the district that I had never seen before. And I hope that everyone watching and listening to this will go along to the Black Butt and the Heritage Roy Emerson Museum and actually take that tour, because it was a real eye-opener and I actually had a fantastic time. The other thing is the big thinking that you guys are doing with regards to collaborating with all the different outside, with Baido and Red Earth and Stanwell. I think that is fantastic, and I think the more of that we do, the better. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Potter. And if I could just also add some comments there. I love the concept of moving to a regional development portfolio and a regional development strategy. I'm really keen to hear more about your concept as we look at our structure post-corporate plan finalisation. Our policy does provide for advisory groups, advisory committees that sit underneath these standing committees. And I was really, as I said, buoyed to hear your desire, Councillor, to bring together all of those key stakeholder groups across the region to form the regional development advisory group. I think that would provide a wonderful community engagement framework, a wonderful ideas stimulation framework that would then feed into, as you've importantly raised here, that really important project pipeline that we need to develop as a council. That framework will no doubt help fuel that development of such, and the regional development strategy. I think it's wonderful to hear that's tremendous. Wow, in terms of Lake Boondooma and Yalakul, aren't those numbers significantly up, and aren't they tracking well? We're tracking towards becoming, Boondooma, the premier inland fishing destination in Queensland, at least in Queensland. Yalakul, with the management we've got there now, is clearly tracking to becoming one of the premier inland tourist destinations, again, not just in southern Queensland, but entire Queensland. It really, really is, and it's really a credit to everyone involved, particularly our staff, in bringing it to this point. The visitor information centres, 30,000 hours. I mean, that is absolutely amazing, isn't it? And, it's the volunteers, but it's also the staff in supporting those volunteers. And I congratulate and thank you, Mr. CEO, because I know you've played a direct hand in managing and keeping those visitor information centres ticking over. But to produce those statistics at a COVID year, wow, what a tremendous outcome. It just shows the power of the people we have in this region. And of course, the QCN dark fibre connection into Kingaroy, a leading project in Queensland that our council is charting a whole new path on in working with industry. And Mr. CEO, again, if I can embarrass you again, thank you for the work you're doing there in leading that project in collaboration with other organisations. And the traditional owners of our land, the Indigenous community. I'm so pleased you highlighted that, Councillor Shoemaker. Development of Indigenous tourism isn't just about tourists. It's about sharing the story of 65,000 years, the oldest remaining civilization on the planet. And I look forward to the day when every person in the South Burnett, if not the country, can get goosebumps when we talk about our wonderful Indigenous heritage and culture. And I would like to think that our state and federal governments will put a hell of a lot more emphasis on recognising our Indigenous people in the Constitution, on ingraining into our education system Indigenous history before we learn about European history. And that will then fuel the pride in our Indigenous people. And what we're doing as a region, what you're doing in working with Councillor Duff and others, to promote Indigenous tourism around the Bunya Mountains, around Cherbourg. Wouldn't it be great that we get every Queenslander through that ration shed and learn the story of Cherbourg? And there's just so much to be achieved there, not just in terms of tourism, but in terms of uplifting our Indigenous people to achieve the tremendous potential that they have to contribute to this nation. So, look, that's a pretty powerful statement I've made, but I just want to say, Councillor Shoemaker, again, thank you for a wonderful report. There's a lot of wonderful opportunity for our region moving forward, and I'm sure you're going to kick some great goals with your colleagues in this room and with the staff and with, importantly, those stakeholders in the community. Thank you. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. That's a tremendous, tremendous uplifting report. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor Shoemaker, fantastic. I'd just like to reiterate, you know, our volunteers, if there's 30,000 hours of supposed volunteer work, there's probably 30,000 more that doesn't get recognised, because we know the people in places like that don't put their hands up and don't ask for recognition, you know, goes by the wayside and doesn't get recognised, because so many people don't want to be recognised in that field. Saturday at the town hall was absolutely sensational to sit there and have lunch with some of our volunteers and listen to their stories. Was just incredible. The Black Butt Tag Along Tour, I mean, the tip of an iceberg. There's so many things we've got in this region, the South Burnett. It's just incredible. And we all jumped, for people that didn't know, us councillors jumped in a car together, and we honestly enjoyed. That was one of the highlights, and there's been many, but certainly a highlight in my term as a councillor, to go down to the Black Buck region and to see what they're doing there in that Roy Emerson Museum and that tag-along tour. That is a must-do. As there's so many things within this region, is a must-do thing. So hopefully that gets up and running and gets bigger and better than what we saw the other day, because it is fantastic. And the Aboriginal tradition there, what we saw with that, there's so much that we can't afford to lose in this Burnett region, and that's it within the entire state and the country. So it was fantastic. With our visitor information centres, those numbers, I look at those each month and they're incredible. I mean, COVID's been a dictator to a lot of things, but touching on that, Lake Bundoomba and Yalakul, how many councils, regional councils, can skite to have facilities like that in their region, and we've got 2 of them. We were fortunate enough, Councillor Duff and the Mayor, we went out to Bundoomba 2 weekends ago and released 78,000 fingerlings out there. Just incredible. Like, that's just one of the things that's going on out there. I actually went there simply to make sure there is fish in there, because when I go fishing I seldom catch one, but there's 78,000 being released there, so hopefully I can get one of those the next time. In 12 months' time, they might be plate size for me, but I must be doing something wrong. I might have to liaise with General Manager Meehan on some fishing techniques. But yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and just wanted to touch on those few subjects. Our facilities, our volunteers, just incredible. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well said, Councillor. Councillor Henson, thank you very much. Okay. Well, Councillor Duff, if you'd like to add some commentary, then we'll come back to Councillor Shoemaker to wrap
let
up.
everyone know that there's some fish being released to BP Dam at 9 o'clock on Saturday as well. So if you want to come along and have another go at putting the Mayor and I under the water, that'd be fun. Thanks.
Councillor Duff, come prepared, because you're definitely going in the water this time. Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the conversation. I certainly agree with Councillor Henson's comments, yours and Councillor Potter's. We, the South Burnett, are the envy, I think, of so many regions. I certainly feel like this last 12 months, I know a lot of people have the indication from the outside that this council doesn't care about economic development. And I just want to put that to bed, because I feel like over the last 12 months, in my role as economic development portfolio holder, and certainly all of you as councillors, we have had a strong focus on the growth of our region and providing good outcomes for the people of our region. And I know it's been a big crazy year, but there's been a lot of work that's gone in behind the scenes, a lot of kitchen table conversations that aren't seen in this chamber or aren't seen in the community. But I want the community to be assured that we are all working overtime to really shape up a strategy, a regional development strategy
that will lead this community into the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years. Just recently, I attended the Supply Chain Forum in Bundaberg, which was excellent and just inspired me a little bit more. And I know we've just this week had discussions with the Department of State Development, and we've got we've got a great relationship with them and a commitment to meeting with them every single quarter, face to face, and to talk through our relationship, the things that are happening in our region, and find those little nuggets and opportunities, nuggets of wisdom I like to call them, and opportunities to really take our region forward. So I'm very excited about that into 2021. And from the Bundaberg Supply Chain Forum, I think I just scraped the surface around some of the work that's been happening in Bundaberg. And I think there are some huge learnings for us as a region that we can bring back, particularly from the agricultural sector. That has just boomed. And they've found ways, which I know we've talked about manufacturing and value adding, and that I think there's great opportunities from Bundaberg, great learnings from Bundaberg that we can embed here in the South Burnett. So I feel like the last 12 months, yes, we've been in a bit of a holding pattern, but we've certainly been running. We've certainly got our strategy, I think, for regional development in our heads. And I'm really looking forward to working with this community to embed it early in 2021, because I think there's some great things to happen. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for a great year. And I just want to assure the community that we have a strong focus on this.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker, and I think it's important to share that with the community, and it's going to be a big year for us for regional development in 2021, because, as you said, there is a lot of information there that we've been collecting, a lot of mindset around this that's going to come through, and you're going to see results throughout the course of the next 12 months. Right, well, thank you very much, councillors. All in favour of acceptance of Councillor Shoemaker's report. Thank you all. Passed unanimously. Item 7.2, just to wrap up, is the Economic Development and Tourism Monthly Update. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, I won't speak very much. It's again, like a lot of them, is getting the data into a usable format. A couple of attachments, which are tourism reports presented for information. If the councillors want to speak about it, or happy to answer questions, but this will become, and certainly agreeing with Councillor Shoemaker, as this period of reset is now coming to the 6 months hiatus that we said originally, you'll see a lot more of this data now and the back work coming to the fore.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. And again, we talk about reporting regimes and having that information flow through so we can actually get some tangible measurement around our KPIs. So it's good to see that we're now getting this reporting into our standing committee process. Thank you very much. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank CEO Mark. I know it has been a tricky 6 months for him, and this, I think, this is a very draft report. I would really welcome councillors' feedback around the kind of information that they would like to see from our visitor information centres and tourism in general. We had a great meeting with Southern Queensland Country Tourism CEO Peter Homan this week, and there's some excellent data there in that report that I won't talk through, but I am spending some concerted effort on better understanding these metrics and the data presented so that we can take some learnings from this and really embed it in our approach going forward. I just wanted to point out, I was very excited to hear from CEO Mark that our visitor information centres have overspent on their budget, but don't have heart failure, because the really great thing in that is they're overspent because they've actually sold more product than ever. And it just goes to show, I think, as we look into 2021 and as we focus on what the future of our visitor information centres might look like, I think it just demonstrates how critical those centres are in meeting the needs of our visitor economy, in the fact that people are pulling in because they want to know what a local knows. They want to have the story, and I'm really keen to see us, as we come into budget discussions, really consider how we empower our volunteers with more familiars so that there can be more of those local stories shared. But I just wanted to point out how just impressive it is, just how much product, when you look at those sales amounts, I know the numbers in the scheme of our budget seem quite small, but when you think about how many jars of chutney that is, how many bags of peanuts that is, that's a lot of chutney and peanuts. So I'd just really like to acknowledge CEO Mark for the work that's gone into this, and our incredible visitor information centres. I'd also like to acknowledge Sam and Stacey, who are on council's team, who have done an enormous amount of work over this last 6 months with our volunteers. And, you know, the feedback from our community has been exceptional. Councillor Potter's just pointed out, and I will raise this, thank you, Councillor Potter. One exceptional stat before we finish: South Burnett's occupancy rate for October 2020 was 69%, a 26.24 increase year on year, and remains the highest occupancy rate in Southern Queensland Country Region for the 4th consecutive month. So I know there's been a lot of, I know that we've had overhauls, and I know there's been work in our community that brings people to the region, but it just goes to show how many people are looking to visit and be in the South Burnett, which is fabulous. So I look forward to the year ahead, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shoemaker. And of course, that occupancy rate, when we're comparing that, we're comparing with regions such as Toowoomba and Southern Downs. It's very, very proactive regions in terms of inland tourism. So it's coming off a fairly high benchmark in terms of competitiveness, and to be at the top of the list in that company is a tremendous effort, tremendous result. And Councillor Shoemaker, all councillors, Mr. CEO, you've led this program tremendously well in a difficult COVID year. To get such tremendous stats under such circumstances is a real credit to you and your team. Thank you. Okay, so that being the case, I'll move that the report be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Henson. All in favour? Thanks, councillors. Passed unanimously. We don't have any items for the confidential section, so I'll now move that we close the meeting. Oh, we just closed. I always get that wrong. Okay, we're going to close at 12:15 p.m. Thank you all, and look forward to next week. We've got our ordinary meeting of council at 9 a.m. next Wednesday. For those who've tuned in, I hope you've enjoyed the meeting. For those who participated, thank you very much.